Chapter 1378 I'll teach you a sword technique. This young man was called Huang Pang, and he was a member of the Huang clan, one of the 4 major clans. He was extremely young, yet he had already advanced to the Sun-Moon tier. Thus, he was as proud and haughty as could be. Ling Han ignored him and continued to focus on the 3 words Grand Sun Palace. A great elite had sealed their formidable power inside these words, and thus resonating with them could actually elevate his cultivation. Perhaps the great elite had only casually written these 3 words. However, because they had been far too powerful, they had naturally imbued a wisp of their overwhelming power inside the words. This power was enough to help Ling Han advance 1 subminor level. Were these words written by a Genesis tier saint? Ling Han didn't mull over this for too long. Right now, all he wanted to do was absorb this power and elevate his cultivation. He could ponder these trivial matters later. Huang Peng was infuriated. Ling Han had actually spaced out again. Just how much was he belittling him? Wicked thoughts involuntarily surged into his mind. A malicious look flashed across his eyes, and a divine sword suddenly appeared in his hand. With a single motion, he slashed this sword at Ling Han's arm. After all, they were all members of the 4 major clans. Thus, he didn't dare to kill anyone inside this mystery realm. Slicing off Ling Han's arm would serve as good a warning as any. In any case, immortals were powerful beings, so losing an arm wouldn't be a huge deal. With a few months' rest, one's severed limbs would naturally grow back. Ding! His sword struck Ling Han's arms. However, sparks flew through the air as the blade of his sword bounced back up. He was completely unable to injure Ling Han. Huang Peng was stunned. What on earth was with this person's physique? His defenses were far too astounding. However, he instantly came to a realization. Ling Han was definitely doing this on purpose. He was pretending to be spaced out, yet he was actually fully focused and had already covered his entire body in an armor of origin power. It was also because of this that he had been able to block his strike. How detestable! The passers-by were all astonished. Was Ling Han stupid or crazy? He had been attacked by someone, yet he was still standing there and not retaliating. Huang Peng became even more enraged. He raised his sword and continued to attack Ling Han. Ding 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 ding. Sparks flew through the air, yet Ling Han's physique was tougher than even godly metal. He remained unscathed no matter how Huang Peng attacked him. The people in the surroundings couldn't help but find this hilarious yet also curious. The toughness of Ling Han's physique was far too astonishing. Hearing the laughter around him, and seeing the mocking look in people's eyes, blood involuntarily rushed into Huang Peng's head. Killing intent instantly oozed from his body. At this moment, how could he still care about the relationship between the 4 major clans? The tip of his sword stabbed toward Ling Han's eyes. No matter what, one's eyes would definitely be the weakest part of their body. Regardless of how powerful one's physique, they would definitely still have some weak points. However, if someone were stabbed through the eye, their mind would definitely be obliterated if the weapon penetrated far enough. This was a matter of life and death. However, Huang Peng didn't care. Right now, he wanted Ling Han to die. Stop! There was a loud roar as a streak of sword light flashed over. Ding! Huang Peng's attack was instantly blocked. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Han Dong, you actually dare to meddle in my matters?" The person who had blocked Huang Peng's attack was none other than the sword maniac who always wore a dark expression. His true identity was Han Dong, the rising star of the Han clan. He wore a desolate expression, and said, "You're actually using the noble sword to perform such sneaky attacks. You're not worthy of using the sword." Huang Peng humphed and said, "Sword maniac, is this brat a member of your Han clan? Hurry up, make him apologize to me." "You're not worthy," Han Dong replied coldly. He wore a look of utter disdain. "Very well. You all dare to belittle me? Do you think that I'm easy to push around?" Huang Peng brandished his sword as he turned around to face Han Dong. "Han Dong, how many years has it been since we last fought each other?" A solemn expression appeared on Han Dong's face. Although he disdained Huang Peng's character, he didn't dare to belittle his strength. Thus he also raised his sword, and said, "It's been almost 300 years. Then let us battle again." Huang Peng slashed down with his sword, fusing into it his 4 suns and moons. The sword chi that burst from his sword transformed into a blood-red tiger that charged at Han Dong. Han Dong was naturally unafraid. It wasn't long before the two of them became locked in an intense battle. Meanwhile, Ling Han was in another world as he greedily absorbed the mystical power from the 3 words. There was only a single chance to absorb this power. However, who had ever stopped here to take an extra glance at the words before? It was because of this that this huge opportunity had fallen through to him. After almost 30 minutes, he finally shuddered and exited his trance-like state. Origin power surged through his body like the tumultuous waves of the sea. This origin power was at least 10 times more powerful than before. Middle stage of the low extreme. He hadn't failed his expectations, and had elevated his cultivation to the next sub-minor level. At this moment, he finally became aware of the commotion in the surroundings. He saw the intense battle between Han Dong and Huang Peng, both of who were wielding swords. Their battle was incredibly fiery. Both of them were fully absorbed in the battle, and thus their strikes were all ruthless and deadly. Although Ling Han had been immersed in another world just then, his body had still been present. Thus, nothing had escaped his observation. It was just that he had pushed all of these observations outside his mind. Now that he had returned to his senses, the scenes from before all flashed through his mind. Killing intent involuntarily flashed across his eyes. You walked into me first, yet you actually refused to apologize. So be it if that were all. Yet, you actually became enraged due to embarrassment and tried to harm and even kill me? What's the point of letting you live? However, this Han Dong person is fairly interesting. Ling Han suddenly lashed out. Wang! An overwhelming aura swept into the surroundings, forcefully dragging Han Dong and Huang Peng apart. This was the crushing advantage of heavenly body tier elites over sun-moon tier cultivators. Thus, Ling Han was naturally able to separate them with ease. Ling Han smiled at Han Dong, and said, I'll teach you a sword technique. Watch carefully. Who do you think you are? You actually dare to interfere in our battle? Huang Peng roared in anger. He was extremely pissed off. Ling Han ignored him, using his index and middle finger like a sword as he unleashed the lightning sword technique. Shua! Sword chi burst forth and instantly sliced Huang Peng's body into 2. Heaven's might wreaked havoc and instantly obliterated the 2 halves of his body. Only his divine sense managed to escape. Why, you actually dared to destroy my body? Huang Peng was both stunned and enraged. Even if he possessed someone else's body, there was no way he could achieve a 100% affinity between his soul and his new host body. In other words, Ling Han had severed his cultivation path. Ling Han's gaze was frosty and piercing as he glanced at Huang Peng's divine sense. Don't make me regret not killing you. This ice-cold gaze caused Huang Peng's divine sense to tremble in fear. He didn't dare to utter another word as he frantically fled into the distance. Ling Han's killing intent gradually disappeared. Although he hadn't obliterated Huang Peng's divine sense, he had buried a wisp of sword intent within it. This wisp of sword intent would erupt 3 years later, and at that time, it would be almost impossible for Huang Peng to escape death. This was the territory of the 4 major clans after all, so he had chosen not to kill Huang Peng here. Even if powerful elites couldn't enter this mystery realm, he would eventually have to leave anyway. Thus, he couldn't take things too far. With things the way they were now, the Huang clan would definitely be enraged. However, Huang Peng was the one who had wronged him first, so it was likely that the Huang clan wouldn't have the face to complain. However, if he had killed Huang Peng, it would have been a completely different story. Meanwhile, Han Dong was still contemplating Ling Han's sword technique. Only after a long time did he say, I was only able to grasp less than 1/10,000th of your sword intent. There was a look of fervent excitement on his face. That sword technique had been far too powerful. Moreover, it had been starkly different from the commonly practiced sword Dao of this age. It was a completely new path. Ling Han smiled as he performed the lightning sword technique again. At his cultivation level, there was naturally no need to focus on form anymore. What was important was one's intent realm. Han Dong obviously couldn't grasp the power of heaven's might. In any case, what Ling Han was teaching him was the mindset to challenge accepted regulations. Sure enough, this person wasn't stupid. After 3 days, he half-kneeled to Ling Han and respectfully bowed to show his gratitude. He then turned around to leave, not even entering the palace. With what he had comprehended and learned, his trip had already been completely worth it. Right now, he needed to return to cultivate in seclusion so that he could explore the intent realm of Ling Han's sword technique. Chapter 1379 Saint King Great Herb. This could be considered destiny. It was rare that he would encounter a sword maniac. Among Ling Han's 6 disciples, Kong Shuyuan and Yun Yong Wang both learnt alchemy from him. In terms of cultivation, they merely pursued cultivation levels, while their battle prowess belonged to the category of weaklings among their peers. They had been misled by the bad influence he had been in his last life. Chen Ruijing wielded a saber, whereas Zhang Yefeng was a jack of all trades but a master of none, very similar to Ling Han in his last life as well. As for the 2 disciples he had taken in this lifetime, Ding Ping was more adept at a physical battle, using his fists to solve problems, because of his outstandingly ferocious strength. Though he had yet to teach Zhou Yao much, the latter was outstandingly talented, and could summon demonic beasts, so the path he took would definitely not be the path of a swordsman, either. Thus, Ling Han actually could not find anyone to inherit his lightning sword technique. Now looking at how Han Dong was so completely focused on swordsmanship, and how their fates were now intertwined, he decided to teach him a part of the profound meanings of the lightning sword technique. Of course, aside from Ling Han, it was practically impossible for a second person to completely grasp the lightning sword technique in this world. Firstly, they would have to be capable of calmly observing in the midst of a heavenly tribulation, right? And that one trial would eliminate everyone else. Ling Han took in a deep breath, and strode into the Grand Sun Palace. At this moment, if there was anyone who deigned to pay attention, they would discover that though the 3 words were still as majestic as they had been, they seemed to have lost a certain implicit charm. Middle stage of the low extreme, great. Ling Han was extremely pleased. If he had depended on his own effort to cultivate, even if he had endless alchemical pills he could ingest, he would need as many as 100 years to complete accumulating so much, but not even half a day had passed now. If he was still not satisfied with that, then that would really be too demanding. He couldn't help but be even more expectant. In the remaining 8 palace halls, could he also obtain this kind of gain? This caused him much excitement, and even his steps sped up slightly. There were not much furnishings in the palace hall. It was actually designed with the center empty. Rather than calling it a palace hall, it would be more appropriate to call it a large-scale garden, as there was a stalk of grass growing right in the center. It was obviously a stalk of grass, but was as tall as 300 meters. It was completely dark green in color, and a tiny fruit was borne on the very top. The fruit was only about the size of a soybean, completely disproportionate with the massive size of the plant itself. Yet Ling Han immediately looked astonished. He had now grasped a total of 810,000 basic godly medicines of the immortal realm. Even if there were new varieties, they would have evolved from the 810,000 types of godly medicines. He could trace the roots and deduce the medicinal effects of the new breed. And this stalk in front of him was a level 20 godly medicine. Godly medicines that had reached level 17 could be called Saint Herbs, and level 20. That would be a Saint King Great Herb. If one ingested this fruit, would it be capable of allowing a mortal to reach the heavens in one go and directly become a Genesis tier elite? Though the battle prowess of this kind of Genesis tier elite would definitely be the lowest among his peers, it was definite that he would still be able to easily suppress all those below the Genesis tier. Without speaking of anything else, merely the words Saint King Great Herb were enough to cause a stirch. But in these millions of years, this great herb had always been here because, firstly, it had not ripened, and secondly, it definitely had to be too difficult to harvest. Ling Han saw very clearly. It was not a puppet that was guarding this Saint Herb, but rather a formation. He could not dispel it. It was too complex. He had a feeling that this was a supreme killing formation. If he attempted to dispel it, he would definitely encounter a merciless attack, and with his present power, it would mean definite death. He summoned out the notionless saint while everyone was not paying attention. "Brat, let me warn you, if you dare disrupt my cultivation again, I will eat." The notionless saint was just complaining. This brat was really too unconscientious. He kept throwing him out to block disasters every now and then. However, when he saw the Saint Herb in front of them, he immediately looked stunned, and exclaimed in shock, "Heavenly Origin Dao Fruit." Ling Han was surprised, and asked, "Senior, do you also recognize this Saint Herb?" Even he had only found out after reading various illustrated handbooks of godly medicines. Nonsense. As a saint, I naturally am very familiar with all the saint herbs in this world, the notionless saint retorted with disdain. He actually dared to doubt the insight of a saint? That was really underestimating him too much. Ling Han snickered and asked, "Then does Senior have a way to dispel this formation? As long as we can transplant it into the Black Tower, we can have as many saint herbs as we eat rice grains in future." This was naturally an exaggeration. However, it was extremely possible that they could harvest a saint herb every few million years, and this was already very, very shocking. The notionless saint did not answer Ling Han, but rather continued to stare at the formation. Not long later, a layer of cold sweat actually gathered on his forehead. He couldn't help but shiver and said, "A supreme killing formation. A supreme killing formation. Can we dispel it?" Ling Han hurriedly asked. He also knew that this was a supreme killing formation, but how could it be dispelled? It cannot be dispelled. The notionless saint shook his head. It can only be forcibly barged through, but with the might of this killing formation, perhaps even saint kings could be killed. When he said these words, he was very much at a loss. This meant that they could only stare at this great herb helplessly. If even saint kings could be killed, then those strong enough in this world to forcibly dispel this formation and harvest the saint herb would really be numbered. Not only would they have to become a saint king, their battle prowess would also have to be outstanding. They might have to be a 6-star genius, 8-star genius, or even 10-star genius. Ling Han thought for a moment. Since he was completely incapable of collecting this saint herb at this moment, he had best not confuse himself further on this matter. He should turn his attention on to other areas. With a wave of his hand, he drew the notionless saint back into the Black Tower. This saint had to be very gloomy. Just think, he had once belonged to the strongest group in this world, yet was now easily summoned and dismissed with a single thought from Ling Han. He was now treated completely like a babysitter. Ling Han passed this saint herb by, and arrived at the second half of the palace hall. There was a passageway ahead of him, and the end would be the second floor of the Medicine King's cave. There were no guards. It was simply an empty pathway, but no matter how many people walked in, they would very soon disappear. It was extremely bizarre. Ling Han strode forwards. He took care to observe, but without his knowledge, the people in front of him had vanished, and when he took a few more steps ahead, the sound of footsteps behind him had disappeared as well. He had become all alone. The scene changed, and he appeared inside a stone chamber. There was a stone table in front of him, and there was only an hourglass on the table. However, the sand within was not flowing. Random trial. Identifying medicinal ingredients. A cold voice rang out, containing not even the slightest bit of emotion. Within the time limit, the more identified, the better the results will be. Begin. Without giving Ling Han any time to prepare himself, the hourglass began to count down, and an image of a medicinal ingredient appeared in front of Ling Han. If he used his hand to stimulate it, the medicinal ingredient could even be spun left and right, turned up and down, showing all the details. Black sun tear sesame. Fiery maple orchid leaf. Water tooth grass. Purple heaven ironwood root. Ling Han answered very swiftly. Usually, when the medicinal ingredient turned once, he would immediately call out its name. Thus, there was practically no pause in the images, and they were rapidly changing. The sand in the hourglass flowed, and completely finished in about an hour later. Past, the cold voice declared. Pa, a jade scroll suddenly appeared on the stone table, and at the same time, the image of a second hourglass appeared above Ling Han's head. Furthermore, it was already starting to count down. Going by the speed that the sand was flowing at, it could last for about 10 days. 10 days. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. Chapter 1380 Ancient Dao Green Lotus. The 4 great clans had entered here multiple times, and naturally had a very firm grasp of the details. Going by Lin Yuqi's words, in the history of the 4 great clans, the longest time one of them stayed on the second floor was 5 days. That was an unusual genius. He was not skilled in concocting alchemical pills, but focused on identifying medicinal ingredients, and was especially skilled in putting them together. At the time, he had been extraordinarily lucky. It just so happened that the test was about the category he was skilled in, and he had thus attained the best result in history and managed to stay 5 days, establishing a historical record. After him, no matter how prodigious or genius those who came after were, they only managed to stay for 3 days. After all, this did not only require abilities, but also required exceptionally good luck. But Ling Han, he possessed 10 days' time. This was enough for him to stay over 9 days on the second floor, and on the last day, he could head to the next palace hall and attempt advancing onto the 3rd floor. Boom! This stone chamber was collapsing and crumbling. Ling Han hurriedly grabbed the jade scroll on the stone table. When the stone chamber had turned completely into nothing, he appeared in the space of the 2nd floor. This was no longer a hilly region, but rather a damp area. Obviously, the godly medicine growing here needed an environment rich in water. The map of this 2nd floor is much simpler and cruder. Ling Han drew out a new map. Because there was a limit to the time that one could stay here, and there were not many that could pass the test, the map of the 2nd floor was obviously not complete and accurate enough. And this was still the 2nd floor. The map of every subsequent floor would be even simpler and cruder, and when he reached the 8th floor, there was only an outline of the terrain. There was not even any indication what level of godly medicine was there on this floor. Ling Han put away the map. He continued to fly towards a certain area whilst drawing out the jade scroll he had just obtained. His divine sense swept over it, and innumerable information instantly appeared in his mind. That included 20 pill recipes, which corresponded with respective concoction techniques for level 1 to 20 alchemical pills, nothing more and nothing less. Ling Han already knew some of the pill recipes, but the majority was not known to him. Exceptional Talent Black Origin Pill. Ling Han's eyes lit up. This was a level 10 alchemical pill, and could be ingested by anyone in the low extreme of heavenly body tier to the medium extreme. It had the effect of greatly increasing one's cultivation level, but was not as impressive as the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill, wherein a single pill could provide the boost of a sub-minor level. But without a doubt, this was a method to rapidly increase one's cultivation level in the heavenly body tier. The main ingredients. I am still missing 3 of them at present. Ling Han did not worry about how difficult the concoction technique would be. His main dilemma would always be the problem of medicinal ingredients. Hopefully, I can find all of them here. Ling Han did not put away the jade scroll. After he had obtained the pill recipes, the jade scroll had shattered. Obviously, it could only be inherited once. He flew the whole way, heading towards a specific destination. There was a divine lotus there, and going by his calculations, it just happened to be the time for the divine lotus to ripen at present. Very quickly, a refreshing fragrance wafted over. The mere smell caused his spirit to be energized and the origin power inside his body to become lively. If he cultivated here, it would definitely be half the work, but twice the effect. It was too bad that even a freak like Ling Han could only stay here for 10 days, so even if the effects of your cultivation increased tenfold, what about it? It was completely like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood, completely negligible. Very soon, a green lotus appeared ahead of him. Ancient Tao Green Lotus, a level 10 godly medicine. This green lotus was only 3 feet tall, and grew in a golden pool. It bore a lotus dish that was the size of a fist, and bore 36 lotus seeds on it. It could be seen that there was also a golden carp swimming around in the pool. The lotus fragrance wafted, and the mere smell of it would make one feel carefree and relaxed. From top to bottom, from the seeds themselves to the leaves, this green lotus could be used in medicine. The lotus seeds and root were the most valuable, reaching the height of level 10. In the case of the lotus leaves, they could only be used in level 9 alchemical pills. Ling Han was not the first person to arrive here. There were already 7 people standing in the proximity of the pool. However, not one dared to easily enter into the pool, because that fish swimming around in the pool was not something that could be easily dealt with. Even if it was now very peaceful and looked very ordinary, if anyone really went into the water, it would immediately reveal its malevolent face and kill the intruder without even blinking. This had already been proved countless times. The first floor had puppets, whereas the second floor had demonic beasts. They lived alongside the godly medicine in a mutually beneficial relationship. Ho ho, since you're all so modestly declining, I will help myself, a young man calmly stated. He took one step, and stepped onto the surface of the water. He was actually capable of standing in midair. It had to be known that only when a cultivator had reached the heavenly body tier would he be capable of flight. However, he was obviously only in the sun-moon tier, yet could actually stand in midair. This was not logical. Ling Han looked at the man's shoes. There were multiple divine patterns glowing on them. They should be a god tool whose use was to give a person the ability of flight. The young man strode forwards, and did not disturb the fish underneath him. Very soon, he had reached the side of the green lotus. No one made a move. They were all waiting for that young man to harvest the divine lotus, and then would attempt to snatch it from him. It would definitely be much safer to snatch it from a human being than fighting with the demonic fish below. But their thoughts were obviously too wishful. When the young man approached the green lotus, the water splashed, and the golden carp leaped out of the water. It opened its mouth and spat out a bubble at the young man. This bubble was completely black, and there were halos entwined on its surface. It rapidly became larger. If the young man wanted to pluck the green lotus, he definitely could not avoid this bubble. Thus, he had to either give up on his plans to pluck the lotus and withdraw, or make a move to receive the oncoming attack and see who would come out better off. He chose the latter option, and did not dare to be careless in the slightest. He drew out an ancient mirror, which floated above his head. Immediately, a pillar of light shot out and struck at the water bubble. But even though the pillar of light hit its target, it was like a clay ox entering the sea, disappearing without any sign. It did not even incite the slightest ripple on the bubble. The young man was astonished, and was just about to withdraw and retreat. Yet it was too late, for the bubble had reached and wrapped around him. Pang, pang, pang. It could be seen that the young man was struggling in the water bubble. He was endlessly attacking, wanting to break his way out, but things turned out contrary to his wishes. He was completely incapable of breaking through the shackles of the water bubble. Very quickly, the bubble had descended back into the water. That golden carp opened its mouth once more, and the bubble was sucked and swallowed back into its mouth. A large human had actually been swallowed alive by a carp that was not even a foot long. This scene was slightly bizarre. Hiss, this demonic carp has become even stronger. The remaining 6 people on the banks of the pond all exclaimed in shock. Since they dared to harvest the green lotus, they had naturally done their preparations. They knew the abilities of this demonic carp. But, the moment the demonic carp made its move, they still received a scare. The strength of its abilities had far exceeded their expectations. We've miscalculated. It may be that the ancient Tao green lotus has ripened, which also allowed this demonic carp to obtain massive gains, boosting its abilities greatly. That's right. The demonic beasts here all live alongside the godly medicine, and when the godly medicine ripens, the demonic beasts would definitely become stronger. However, I had never thought that it would reach such an extent. These people all shook their heads. They only felt a helplessness that came from their inability to harvest the godly medicine, yet did not have the slightest intention to rescue their companion that had been swallowed. Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head. His right hand stretched out and grabbed at empty air. His origin power took the form of a giant hand that grabbed out at that green lotus. Seeing how Ling Han had still not given up, the 6 people all smirked coldly, looking like they were planning to enjoy the show. Chapter 1381 Fighting Lin Zihong. The golden carp once again leaped out of the water, and spat out a black bubble as well. Ling Han's right hand grabbed out at empty air, and that giant hand of origin power also clenched. Boom, a powerful wave instantly rose up in the pool, slamming down onto that carp. Due to the powerful attack, the carp was suddenly sent flying. It opened its mouth and spat out a human being. It was precisely the young man that it had swallowed before. The moment he appeared, he screamed in agony. Apparently, the majority of the flesh and blood on his body had been corroded by the carp's stomach acid. This carp would first directly swallow living humans, then digest them slowly with its stomach acid. It could be imagined how much agonizing pain this young man had sustained. Thankfully, as long as his spirit was not destroyed and his dantian was not ruined, no matter how serious his injuries, there was still a chance he could recover. Seeing this scene, the 6 people on the poolside were all stunned, bowled over by Ling Han's abilities. He was too strong. It was merely an embodiment of origin power, and he easily defeated the carp with it. This was an overwhelming level of strength. The 6 people immediately abandoned their thoughts of trying to snatch the divine lotus by force. Hurriedly, they turned and left, fearing that Ling Han would kill them off so that they would not leak out his secret. I never thought that this ancient Dao green lotus would end up in the hands of an outsider like you. A figure swept past, and Lin Zihong was standing by the side of the pool. Looking at him arrogantly, he declared, "Hand over the divine lotus." "Then what?" Ling Han asked calmly. He had provoked him time and time again. Did he really think that he didn't have a temper? And then, it seemed like Lin Zihong had not expected that Ling Han would counter with a question like this, so he was initially blank before he declared, "And then, kneel on the ground and give me 100 kowtows." Ling Han looked at the other party and asked, "I don't seem to have offended you, right?" "Hee, you actually dare bear designs on a woman that I have my eye on, and you still dare say you have not offended me?" Lin Zihong asked, smirking coldly. Only he and Ling Han were here, so he naturally did not bother to further conceal his inner thoughts. Ling Han gave an "oh" and said, "Going by that theory, you are determined to kill me then? You won't get off so easily." Lin Zihong smirked. "I will first destroy your physical body, then slowly refine your divine sense, and let you die in an incredibly agonizing manner." Ling Han gave an "oh," broke into a smile and asked, "Since you are saying that, I can also boldly kill you without worries, and need not be concerned if I am too heavy-handed in my attack. Haha, you are merely in the low extreme. How could you be a match for me?" Lin Zihong smiled proudly. "I am at the peak stage of the medium extreme, and furthermore, I am a 3-star genius. Even if you are a 4-star genius, and are at the peak stage of the low extreme, you are far from becoming a worthy match for me." He was so sure that Ling Han would definitely not be an equal match for him, and that was why he was acting so overbearing. Ling Han murmured, "Since you are so confident in yourself, if you get your words thrown back at you later, you had better not cry. Who asked you to have so little insight, daring attempt to snatch my woman?" Lin Zihong made a move, and grabbed out at Ling Han. His power rolled out and reached the height of the late stage of the high extreme. It was extremely frightening. But the heaven and earth here was much sturdier than the outside world, and even if a heavenly body tier attacked, there would not be any damage. Only slight ripples were created on the water surface. Lin Zihong's face was filled with contempt. He was confident enough that he could suppress Ling Han with a single strike. The gap in cultivation level between the two of them was really much too big. Ling Han also brandished a fist out at Lin Zihong. Pang, the power of both sides clashed, and finally formed a massive impact that caused waves to erupt on the water surface as they rolled out unhindered and fiercely. Lin Zihong's whole expression was filled with shock. Ling Han actually managed to parry this strike from him. Not only had he parried it, it was done with much ease. This was something he could not accept. The other was merely in the low extreme, so how could he possibly be this strong? In terms of power, Ling Han was indeed no match for Lin Zihong. However, he had used Tide of the Ages. Though he had only released a slight bit of its might, it was enough to age the latter's power to a level that he could hold up against. How could this be? Lin Zihong could not accept it. A mere low-extreme cultivator. How could you possibly be capable of standing against me? Ignorant fool. Ling Han's eyes became menacing. His killing intent had already been ignited. Humph. Lin Zihong soon adjusted his way of thinking. So what if he could contend against him? He was the son of the clan patriarch of the On-Yuan branch. Though this branch had indeed declined, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. His background was still incredibly astonishing, so how could it be matched by a savage? He drew out a drum. It was very old and dilapidated, and it was visible that one corner of it was already broken. Images of battles were drawn on the body of the drum, vivid and lifelike, exuding the killing aura that was unique to the battlefield. Tong! He stretched out his hand and clapped onto the drum. Immediately, a low rumble was heard from the battle drum, and shot towards Ling Han's chest like an arrow, causing his heart to involuntarily beat very rapidly for a while. A sliver of blood seeped out of the corner of Ling Han's lips. He shockingly discovered that a hole had actually been torn in his heart. This was extremely astonishing. With how astonishing his physique was, though the strength of his heart could not be compared to the sturdiness of his godly bones, it had almost reached the extent of level 10 godly metal, and now it had actually ruptured. This drum was not so simple. More importantly, Ling Han had been struck without his knowledge. He completely had not discovered where the attack had come from, and this was truly the most bizarre aspect of it. It could not be guarded against. Haha, you want to fight me, you are unqualified. Lin Zihong smirked coldly, his eyes focused on Ling Han. He suddenly delivered a palm strike. Pooh! This time, Ling Han spat out a mouthful of blood. Die! Lin Zihong once again raised his hand, but just at this moment, Ling Han moved. He used the star-plucking step, and had crossed the distance of more than 20 meters in an instant. Tong, the battle drum once again rang out loudly, but Ling Han was not the slightest bit affected. As expected, Ling Han smiled. With the channeling of the indestructible heaven scroll, his heart had already recovered. The drumbeat is shapeless, and cannot be avoided, but that is merely an object, after all. It needs to lock down on its target, so as long as I avoid being locked down by your divine sense, the battle drum would be able to do nothing against me. You monster! Lin Zihong was dumbfounded. He had actually found the loophole in his attack after being hit twice only. Was he really human? Furthermore, this guy had sustained 2 consecutive hits from the drumbeats, and he actually just spat out a mouthful of blood. His heart, though, had not exploded. This was too ridiculous. It's my turn. Ling Han drew his sword. Wang, the divine demon sword seemed to have been provoked, and without waiting for Ling Han to issue a command, it exuded divine light by itself, seeming to be extremely restless. Ling Han simply let go, and the divine demon sword instantly flew out, slashing out towards Lin Zihong. To be more specific, it was slicing out at that battle drum. Tong, tong, tong. Lin Zihong hurriedly struck the battle drum. It was not only capable of killing living beings, it also had terrifying destructive effects on god tools. The sound wave that could not be seen nor touched swept out towards the divine demon sword. This was the power of regulations. This battle drum had been forged by an old ancestor in the eternal river tier of the Yuan branch. It could only be stimulated by someone who was at least in the heavenly body tier. It made use of the regulations of sound waves to hurt one's enemies, shapeless and formless, and it was one of the 3 precious treasures of the Yuan branch. It was also because Lin Zihong was the single son of the present clan patriarch. If not, how could he possibly have been allowed to bring it out? Otherwise, what if they encountered an eternal river tier elite who snatched it away by force? Then the Yuan branch that had been initially declining would only become worse. The divine demon sword struck out, and was actually not affected in the slightest. Chapter 1382 Self-Explosion. Lin Zihong was stunned. The divine sword slashed towards him, and it was actually completely unaffected. Going by his impression, the moment the drumbeat was heard, any kind of god tool would be forcibly shattered and turn into multiple pieces that would sweep past him, without any bit of destructive power left in them. How could he know that the divine demon sword itself was in the category of divine metal? If you used brute force to blast it, there was definitely a maximum limit that the divine demon sword could sustain, but now, if it was in mere terms of regulations, what would divine metal be afraid of? He could see that the sword was just about to strike him. It had not even reached him physically, and that frightening coldness already scared him out of his wits. If he was really struck, that would definitely mean instant death. What kind of sword was this? It was really too terrifying. He hurriedly bounced backwards in retreat whilst repeatedly clapping the battle drum. He still had not given up on striking the divine demon sword down or even taking it as his own. But this was destined to be only a mere dream. The divine demon sword had already leaped into level 10, and was equal to Lin Zihong in terms of cultivation level. And if their cultivation level was equal, if a precious tool forged from divine metal could not overwhelm him, why would it be called divine metal in the first place? Shwa, shwa, shwa. The sword intent was extravagant, forming a large web that was endless and boundless. Lin Zihong tried his best to break out of the siege, but he had still been hit a few times by the sword intent. Immediately, blood gushed out of his body, and could not be stopped no matter what. This was still because it was the sword intent that had cut him. If it had been the actual divine sword that had directly slashed into him, the murderous aura would enter his body and cause even more damage. Hey! Ling Han called out. Suddenly, Lin Zihong's hair stood on ends. He had only cared about dealing with the divine demon sword, and had not looked where he was going in his panic. He had actually retreated within proximity of Ling Han, and this voice had precisely rang out from behind him. However, to defeat the enemy, the chief had to be captured first. Since this was Ling Han's god tool, then he would only need to subdue Ling Han. By then, how would he still be able to control the precious tool? With this thought, Lin Zihong immediately regained his confidence. He suddenly turned around and formed his hand into a claw that grabbed out at Ling Han. "I'll break your dog's paw," Ling Han uttered, smiling. He actually dared to get into a close-quarters battle with him. Where had his courage come from? He shot out a fist that struck at the other's hand. Pang! The two of them exchanged blows. This time, it was not just a clash of origin power. Both their hands had also crashed into each other. Lin Zihong's initially confident expression immediately crumbled, and an expression of great pain appeared on his face. Hi's fingers had all been broken, each of them sticking upright. His flesh had been split, and blood was pouring. The sight of his hand was horrible to see. The nerves of the fingertips were linked with the heart, so it was naturally extremely painful. Lin Zihong also felt a powerful shock. In terms of power, he was at an advantage, so in a situation where both of them still had to reserve some origin power's defense, he would definitely be better off than Ling Han. But now, the situation was that his 5 fingers had all been broken, and Ling Han, on the contrary, was completely unharmed. How was that just? Using 2 fingers like he would a sword, Ling Han moved to tap on Lin Zihong's forehead. In this crucial moment of life and death, a powerful survival instinct suddenly erupted in Lin Zihong. Without bothering about the agonizing pain of his right hand, he forcefully bounced back in retreat. "Take care of your back," Ling Han advised. But how could Lin Zihong actually deign to listen to the words of his enemy? Using the back of his hand, he struck the battle drum. With them being so close, Ling Han definitely wouldn't be able to dodge. Die! Die! Pooh! His hand had not even touched the battle drum when he felt a coldness in his chest. He could see a section of the tip of a sword penetrate out of his own chest. The divine demon's sword. He had actually forgotten that there was such a fatal weapon present. Just like how he had experienced too much pressure when facing the divine demon's sword, causing him to forget about Ling Han, now Ling Han had similarly given him a pressure that came from his possible death, causing him to temporarily forget about the divine demon's sword. However, this was fatal. The divine sword penetrated his body, and furthermore stabbed into such a vital part like the heart. How could he be saved from that? The murderous aura spread out inside Lin Zihong's body. His heart was the first to shatter, and he had instantly suffered a serious wound. However, this was not the most frightening part of it, because the murderous aura was currently attacking his mind and dantian. If his dantian was destroyed, he would lose all his cultivation. If his mind was shattered, his spirit would disperse. Lin Zihong paled in fear. At this moment, he really felt the approach of death. His eyes suddenly lit up, and he called out to Ling Han, "Save me!" Ling Han was shocked. What kind of weirdo was this? He actually asked him to save him. "I am the young clan master of the Yuan branch, and you are just a guest official. I command you!" Lin Zihong shouted loudly. He tried his best to suppress the expansion of the murderous aura inside his body, but this was the power of regulation that was brought by the divine metal. How could its destructive ability be resisted by a mere heavenly body tier? It could be claimed that even if it was a Genesis tier that had his vital point stabbed like this, he similarly would receive a serious injury. At most, he could forcefully subdue his injuries, but it was impossible that it would heal by itself. Ling Han couldn't help but become speechless. Even at this point in time, this guy was still showing off his superiority. "I will let you have Lin Yuqi," Lin Zihong called out sharply. Time was almost up. The murderous aura had spread up into his throat and down into his lower abdomen. It was only a step away from his mind and dantian. "She is not yours in the first place, so how can you say you will let me have her? Furthermore, I have completely no designs on Lin Yuqi." "It was only your own wishful thinking," Ling Han stated calmly. He was naturally not about to make a move to save him. An expression of hopelessness appeared on Lin Zihong's face. At the same time, he was filled with deep regret. At this point in time, Ling Han should not be deceiving him. It was all his fault for being too petty. No, ultimately it was because he was too arrogant. Even if he was a suspected love rival, What about it? With a stretch of his hand, he could have easily erased him. In any case, everyone in this world were ants in his eyes. This kind of mentality caused him to be without the slightest scruples, condescending and supercilious to all around him. However, this kind of hopelessness and regret only flashed briefly before disappearing. In the next instant, he became crazy. Since he was definitely dying, he would pull Ling Han down with him. Explode, he roared, taking the initiative to shatter his dantian. Two heavenly bodies fiercely crashed into each other, creating a terrifying storm of power. If a heavenly body tier elite self exploded, even if he was only in the medium extreme, its might could match the full power attack of the low extreme, or even the medium extreme, of the Eternal River tier. Suddenly, the frightening power formed a tsunami that blasted out in all directions with Lin Zihong as the center. The strongest attack from an Eternal River tier. What heavenly body tier could block that? Lin Zihong's physical body shattered in the first instant. His spirit left his body, and the murderous aura from the divine demon's sword followed him like a shadow. However, he could still struggle away from death for a short while. He wanted to see Ling Han die in his hands with his own eyes. Ling Han's figure flashed, and he had already entered into the Black Tower. At this time, he would naturally not be forcing himself to see if his physique would really be capable of surviving the attack of an Eternal River tier. Then he took a step out. Because he had moved too quickly, it was practically as if he had not left at LL. When he saw that Ling Han was standing in front of him completely unharmed, and that there had not even been any damage done to his clothes, Lin Zihong's spirit completely twisted. He released a defiant roar, but when the murderous aura of the divine demon's sword swept over him, his spirit also wilted instantly. This time, his spirit and form had truly been destroyed. He had not even left behind the smallest bit of his remains. This can be considered as having settled our relationship of karma, Ling Han said calmly, though he stretched out a hand to put away the spatial spirit tool that had been left behind after Lin Zihong had self-exploded. He took a look. Tesque, as expected of the son of a clan patriarch. Not only was there over 100 million true origin stones, there was also a considerable amount of godly metal and medicinal ingredients, which were all extremely valuable. Of course, the most valuable item was that battle drum. Chapter 1383 Readily Surrendering. The highest power of regulations that can be released from this battle drum is Eternal River tier. Ling Han held on to the battle drum. It was too ancient. It seemed like it would be shattered into pieces the moment it was thrown onto the ground. However, in the hands of a heavenly body tier, it should not be capable of reaching this kind of height. Otherwise, my heart should have burst previously, and not merely been wounded. This should be a precious treasure of the Yuan branch. In front of the people of the Treasure Forest Pavilion, it would be best if I do not expose its existence. That would be practically writing the words, "I was the one who killed Lin Zihong" on my forehead. Strictly speaking, I was indeed not the one who killed Lin Zihong. He had exploded himself. Ho-ho, however, as long as I am not on Cloud Apex Planet, this battle drum can be used at will, especially after I go to the Myriad Directions Galaxy. I would have advanced into the Eternal River tier by then, and it would be particularly effective. What is most important is still the Divine Demon Sword. As expected of a Divine Sword, as long as it cuts into the physical body, or hits a vital point, it would mean ultimate death. If a vital point is not hit, then immediately severing the wounded limb could still ensure one's survival. Otherwise, the murderous aura will spread out, and it'll still lead to death. This is a higher level of regulations. Even if the Divine Demon Sword has not progressed to becoming a true celestial tool yet, it will still surpass ordinary god tools. Ling Han mused as he continued to retrieve the spoils of battle. He gave himself 6 days' time to freely roam around. On the 7th day, he definitely had to head to the core of this floor. What if it was also the same as the Great Sun Palace? He would be able to activate resonance and absorb the power contained within. Then, wouldn't he be able to take another step forward? He swept through the area filled with joy and expectation. This was a world of godly medicine, with boundless value, causing Ling Han to be extremely excited. However, this floor was ultimately different from the first floor. The demonic beasts here were not beings that Ling Han could simply draw into the Black Tower. They had their own consciousness, and had to be defeated first. If they could be defeated, then what need was there to draw them into the Black Tower? The demonic beasts here lived alongside the godly medicine. They did not feed on the godly medicine, but rather absorbed the medicinal effects that seeped out from the godly medicine, and grew strong alongside the godly medicine from there. The majority of demonic beasts were in the level of the Sun-Moon tier. Ling Han could easily suppress them with a single hand, but there were also heavenly body tier ones. That would be slightly more troublesome. However, if he encountered demonic beasts at the consummate level of the heavenly body tier, even Ling Han would have to find a way around them. He would first lead the demonic beast away, and then return to harvest the godly medicine. When there was no one around him, Ling Han tried out the battle drum. Its destructive power on those in the consummate level of the heavenly body tier was limited. It could cause an injury, but it would make the demonic beast even more berserk. More frighteningly, there was an old turtle that was in the eternal river tier. It was as massive as a mountain, and there was also a level 13 godly medicine growing upon its back. That was a tea plant, called Zen tea. The plant's leaves could be drunk as tea. Of course, they had to be first refined by an alchemist, who would extract the concept and regulations of heaven and earth from within, which could help in comprehending Tao with a taste. It would be effective for all cultivators in the eternal river tier and below. Ling Han scrambled his brains, but faced with a being in the eternal river tier, he was not even able to handle a sliver of the aura exuded by the creature. And this was still because that old turtle was sleeping. Otherwise, if it actively began to attack, there would definitely be no living creature that could survive on this whole second floor. Ling Han spent 2 days' time here. He had even thrown the notionless saint out, but it was still useless. This ex-saint was indeed quite effective as a scare tactic, but the old turtle slept all this while. He didn't even manage to wake it up, so how was he supposed to scare it? Furthermore, if there was no hourglass above his head, he would immediately begin to weaken the moment he came out. He would be expelled by the Medicine King's cave. Ling Han hurriedly retrieved the notionless saint, and it was inevitable that he would be cursed by this ex-saint. Forget it. Discretion is the better part of valor, and a good man would not bother about this little bit of gain and loss. He comforted himself, but his whole face was completely twisted. He was 100% saying these words without actually meaning them. He sighed. After Ling Han went to a few places with value, he had still attained considerable gains. Finally, he arrived at the end of this floor. Shichen Palace Hall. Ling Han looked at the 3 words above the palace hall, and similarly discovered that some kind of power was sealed within. However, the depressing thing was that he was unable to form any kind of resonance with it and absorb this power from there. He was extremely depressed. This represented a sub-minor level, and could save him at least a few hundred years of hard cultivation. He was unwilling to give up, and endlessly tried. In any case, he still had a lot of time, so he was not in a rush. 1 day and night passed, and he had still made no progress, so he could only give up. Handsome! A sugary sweet voice rang out, and he saw Lin Yuqi gracefully walk towards him from the distance. As she walked, she was still waving her arm. Her sleeve slipped down, revealing a section of her fair and smooth arm, causing one's heartbeat to quicken. Thankfully, there were less than 100 heavenly body tiers here. Who would dare to stare at this kind of elite and reveal a lecherous gaze? Ling Han nodded. Suddenly, a thought flashed in his heart, and when she had come close enough, he asked, "Do you want to have a bit of good luck?" Yet Lin Yuqi showed an expression of suspicion, and she asked, "You aren't thinking of deceiving me into getting in bed with you, are you?" "Hee, if you like me you can say it directly. It's not impossible that I can consider marrying you and dote on you every day." Ling Han paid her words no attention. As long as he did not reply, she would definitely give up on her own after talking on and on without any response from him. He pointed at the 3 words above the doors of the palace hall, and said, "There is a martial intent left behind by an elite hidden within there. As long as you can form resonance with it, you would be able to increase your cultivation level." Really? Lin Yuqi's expression was filled with doubt. If you were really so awesome, why didn't you take it for your own? Handsome, just to deceive me into being touched, this trick of yours is really too inferior. But for the sake of your sincerity, I am still slightly touched. Ling Han put on a poker face and replied, "It's up to you whether you believe it or not." After he said these words, he walked forth and entered into the palace hall. Furthermore, he realized that after he entered this place, the hourglass above his head also stopped flowing. Which also meant that he could prepare well here before he went to undergo the test. Lin Yuqi watched as Ling Han entered into the palace hall, her pretty face bearing an expression of confusion. Ordinarily, Ling Han should not be resorting to such low-level means to deceive her, so she had best take a good look. She raised her head and looked upwards. Under her full concentration, it seemed as if she had attained some kind of resonance with these three words. The origin power in her body surged up violently as if it was about to surge out of her body. That really was the case. She hurriedly used her heart to guide it, and shortly after, a divine light exuded from her slender body, her cultivation level rapidly soaring. If Ling Han had seen this, he would definitely loudly exclaim at the injustice. That was because he had completely no means to activate the three words above, and when he had been on the first floor, he had also used 3 days' time to finally activate the resonance of the three words of Grand Sun Palace. He hadn't been as fast as she had been. The peak stage of the low extreme. After 30 minutes, Lin Yuqi exclaimed with pleasant surprise. "Handsome little brother, you are so nice to me, so how can I spare you? Just obediently surrender to fate. I am definitely going to devour you." She also entered into the palace hall. After rooting out the first floor for so long, she did not waste the slightest bit of time after she had arrived on the second floor. Her motive was to accumulate enough time to stay here, and proceed to the 5th floor to gather a godly medicine. This was the main purpose for entering here in the first place. Directly translated as Washing Dust Palace Hall, but this sounds a little awkward and not at all grand for a place like this, so I chose to use direct pinyin. Chapter 1384. A similar but different Saint Herb. When he entered into the Xichen Palace Hall, what greeted his eyes was a godly medicine that was 300 meters tall. Heavenly Origin Dao Fruit. Why is it this Saint Herb again? Ling Han was curious. This Saint King Herb was there on the first floor, and was also present on this second floor. It should be known that the greater the herb, the more they would supplant other types of herbs. There was practically not much difference between the effects of ingesting 1 and ingesting 100. Then what was the significance of growing 2 Heavenly Origin Dao fruits in this place? Was this something that the owner of this place wanted to present to others as a gift? The 3 words of Xichen Palace Hall were obviously different from Grand Sun Palace. They were obviously not written by the same person, which also meant that there was not merely a single elite in the Medicine King's cave. Did the elites here have a habit of growing Heavenly Origin Dao fruit? Ling Han carefully observed it, and discovered that this Heavenly Origin Dao fruit was slightly different. It seems to have merged with something, and is no longer a pure Heavenly Origin Dao fruit. Ling Han soon came to a conclusion. With his abilities in the field of evaluating medicinal ingredients, it was not difficult for him to make such a judgment. Too bad. He had not carefully observed that Heavenly Origin Dao fruit on the first floor, or he would have attained an even deeper understanding. The fruit is about to ripen. Ling Han raised his head to check. A Heavenly Origin Dao fruit would only bear a single fruit which contained the majestic might of heaven and earth and regulations, which was also why it was known as a Dao fruit. For this kind of top-grade Saint Herb, about to ripen, was a very vague concept. 1 year was very fast, and 10,000 years was also very fast. Even with Ling Han's insight, he was unable to make an accurate judgment. After all, his current cultivation level was still a little too low, what more when there was still a supreme killing formation in the way, which further affected his judgment. There is a need to go to the 3rd floor and carefully observe, Ling Han thought. He headed to the entrance that led to the 3rd floor, and very soon appeared in a stone chamber. There was also a stone table and an hourglass. Identifying medicinal ingredients. Begin. The cold voice rang out once more. What a coincidence! It was another test to identify medicinal ingredients. The test began, and medicinal ingredients appeared one after another in front of Ling Han. However, this one was completely different from the first test, though it couldn't be claimed that the difficulty level had increased. Ling Han answered rapidly, and when the hourglass had finished flowing, he had once again attained a brilliant result. It could be seen that the hourglass that had initially stopped flowing above his head had considerably more silvery sand, and at the same time began to flow again. The time could be accumulated. Ling Han came to this conclusion. Realization also dawned on him. No wonder the hourglass above Lin Yuqi's head was far from flowing completely, and yet she had long since arrived in this place. Obviously, She wanted to head to a specific floor to harvest herbs, and required a very long amount of time. Thus, she merely rushed her way through the second floor, and had not wasted any time at all. Since time could be overlaid, why was it that no one managed to go to the palace hall of the 8th floor? Ling Han didn't understand. Lin Yuqi only said that there was not enough time, but did not explain the exact details of the situation. Forget it. He would naturally find out once he reached the place. Ling Han also decided not to harvest any medicinal ingredients aside from great herbs. He wanted to go to the 9th floor. Was a man with a powerful curiosity. At present, the time that he could stay on the 3rd floor was as long as 13 days. Judging from the amount of sand in the hourglass, there was not much difference between 13 days and 3 days, but the rate at which the sand was flowing had slowed considerably. Of course, his results were glorious and world-shattering, and he had also obtained a prize that included pill recipes from level 1 to level 20, and the pill recipe for a level 11 pill caused his eyes to brighten. This was the flying fire pill, but it was not to be consumed. Instead, it was to be used to wound one's enemies. When the flying fire pill was thrown out, it could create a massive explosion, which was equivalent to a full power attack from someone in the high extreme of the heavenly body tier. At first look, this did not seem all that impressive, but what if 10 of them were thrown at the same time? The might would definitely be on a whole new level. Then what about if there were 100 or 1,000 of them? As long as he had enough wealth, he could concoct several tens of thousands, or even several million, pills and throw them out at the same time. He surmised that even eternal river tiers would be affected at that point. I could concoct this. Ling Han broke into a grin. He checked the required medicinal ingredients, and the main ingredient was a medicinal ingredient called explosion fruit, which would then be engraved with regulations of fire element. After activation, a massive explosion would then be caused. It is naturally best to have as many tricks up my sleeve as possible. In any case, whether I use them or not would be my business. The stone chamber crumbled, and the space of the 3rd floor appeared in front of Ling Han's eyes. In this world of ice and snow, the frosty winds were bitingly cold. It was obvious that there were godly medicines that were suited to grow in a cold environment growing here, but the icy environment also caused great trouble for the people that entered this place. There was snow built up everywhere, and it was possible that killing intent was hidden beneath all the snow. Demonic beasts could pop up and kill the humans. Ling Han came to a conclusion. The demonic beasts that were reared in this closed-up space did not have their own consciousness. Most of them only possessed the instincts of wild beasts, and placed their survival as the main priority. In pursuit of greater strength, they would consciously hunt down and kill cultivators so that they could devour their blood essence. It seemed like now that they were removed from the true heaven and earth, the intelligence of living creatures was also limited. The map of the 3rd floor was naturally even simpler and cruder, but Ling Han merely needed to know a few vague places. He soared through the air. The space here was unable to restrict him, and his capability of flight gave him a very great advantage. Ling Han merely spent 2 days, and had visited all the places that he should go, giving him considerable gains. However, there were some great herbs that were guarded by powerful demonic beasts. Ling Han fortunately led one away and successfully harvested the herb while failing to do the same for all the others. He could only sigh in regret and end his journey of harvesting medicinal ingredients on this floor. He arrived at the palace hall of the 3rd floor. Howren Palace. Ling Han raised his head to check, and surprisingly discovered that these 3 words had already darkened, and there was not the slightest bit of power left in them. Someone had already absorbed the power contained within ahead of him. Had it been this time, or many years ago? If it was the latter, it meant that this secret was not a secret that belonged solely to Ling Han, but should have rather been spread among the 4 great clans. Otherwise, everyone would have stayed for a very, very long time in the palace hall on the 1st floor. But why did power still remain in the words in the palace hall of the 1st floor? Ling Han nodded. Just like he could not attain resonance with the words left behind in the palace hall of the 2nd floor, this was not a gain you could simply obtain just because you had discovered the secret contained within. The person who had drawn away the power in the words in the palace hall on the 3rd floor would probably have wanted to collect even more power, or in other words, wanted to leave this kind of gain for his own descendants, and that was why he had hidden the secret all this while. Ling Han entered into the palace hall, and saw the 3rd heavenly origin Dao fruit. True enough, there was a slight difference here too. It must have fused with a certain item, causing a change. However, I am not sure exactly what it fused with. What I am sure of, though, is that this one is definitely different from the second floor. Ling Han observed carefully, and was extremely confident in his assessment. It couldn't be that the great herbs inside the palace halls of these 9 floors were all heavenly origin Dao fruit, right? 9 was the extreme number of heaven and earth. There were 9 heavenly origin Dao fruits, and each had changed slightly. It seemed to have a certain significance to it. The methods of the Medicine King's cave were astonishing, and the herbs growing here were all Saint King great herbs, which naturally caused Ling Han to feel considerable wariness toward the owner of this place. This kind of elite. Even if he had died, the tricks he had left behind could also be world-shaking. Furthermore, it was not that he had not witnessed someone who had died in a mystery realm come back to life. As far back as the Azura Demon Emperor, who had previously been severed into 8 parts and still managed to leap and frisk about, and there was also the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm, where the 2 great elites were merely pretending to be dead. This place. Could it be also the same? Chapter 1385 Flower of Makara. It really was possible. On the 3 palace halls that Ling Han had seen so far, the 3 names that were left behind were all different, which clearly meant that there had not been just a single elite here. If the 9 palace halls were all the same, it meant that there had once been as many as 9 elites here. If it was claimed that these 9 people had all died suddenly, without leaving behind an heir, that was a little improbable, wasn't it? Then it would be really bizarre. However, nothing had happened in these millions and millions of years. He wouldn't be so unlucky that something would suddenly happen when it was his turn here, right? Ling Han shrugged. He had the luck of heaven and earth giving him a boost. It definitely wouldn't be that bad. On the 3rd stage, the test was about piecing together medicinal ingredients. This naturally was also Ling Han's strength, and in this kind of test, there were not just 810,000 basic medicinal ingredients, there were also breeds that had evolved from the former. However, Ling Han had a grasp of the basics, and even if he hadn't seen them before, he had nothing to be afraid of. With the knowledge he had grasped, he could make a deduction, and his accuracy rate was still as high as 100%. This time, he gained another 10 days' time. Ling Han put away the pill recipes, and entered into the 4th floor. He immediately felt an extremely high temperature greet him. Multiple volcanoes appeared in front of him, spraying out fiery flames, boiling red lava flowing from them. Even the air itself was burning so hot that ripples had appeared. Needless to say, this was a world of fire element godly medicine. There may be explosion fruit here. Because the information about this floor was even lesser, Ling Han could not search according to the map. Instead, he could only search inch by inch. Thankfully, he still had enough time. 7 days later, he arrived at the foot of a mountain. There was a fiery red forest ahead of him. Flames were burning on the tree leaves, yet they did not burn to nothing. Upon a closer look, these flames were obviously coming directly from these leaves themselves. Between the tree leaves, there were multiple bright red fruits. They were shaped like pineapples, and the sight of them caused Ling Han to grin. Explosion fruit. After searching for so many days, he had finally found them. Sha sha sha. An unusual sound was heard from between the tree leaves. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, and saw that multiple crimson snakes were actually coiled on the tree branches. They were not very long, only about 1 to 2 feet long. The majority of them were very quiet, but there were a few that were wriggling around and feeding, and their food was precisely the explosion fruits. They would feed even on explosion fruits. What an unusual taste. Since they were called explosion fruits, it was naturally because they could explode. But these crimson snakes simply swallowed them whole. Why were they not afraid that their stomach would explode from ingesting these fruits? Ling Han did not dare come to blows here. The explosion fruit was extremely unstable. It would explode upon sustaining the slightest bit of impact. He had not come to root out the snake lair. Thus, he thought for a moment, and drew out the battle drum. Pung! He delivered a smack. The target he had locked on was a crimson snake. The snake's body suddenly stiffened, and it dropped down from the tree. It had been scared out of its wits, its divine sense shattered, so it was naturally dead. Pa pa pa! He struck the drum endlessly, and the crimson snakes fell down from the trees one after another like rain. Though the living creatures here had not developed intelligence, they still had survival instincts. The remaining crimson snakes focused on Ling Han and began to attack him. Ling Han was not scared. Instead, he was pleased. He did not fear these snakes. Rather, he was worried making a move would detonate the fruits on the trees. Since you all were willing to come down, that would be great. Heavens might spread out. Pa, 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 pa immediately. A few hundred crimson snakes directly turned over, showing their stomachs. It was really that overwhelming. As long as their abilities were slightly inferior to Ling Han, they wouldn't even have the chance to make a move. They would be directly scared to death. But there were still as many as 100 crimson snakes left which swept towards Ling Han. 100 snakes moved together, rubbing against the ground, creating a raspy sound. As if they possessed some kind of mysterious power, it caused Ling Han to feel distracted, his thoughts in turmoil. They could be considered to have some level of strength. Ling Han channeled his origin power, and his spirit immediately guarded his thoughts and mind. He released a battle cry, and Wang, the sound wave spread out, completely suppressing the sound of the 100 snakes sweeping on the ground. Xiao, xiao, xiao. These crimson snakes arched up and fiercely attacked Ling Han. Each of them was like a sharp arrow. Ling Han shot out a fist. The terrifying power of his punch swept out, and 7 to 8 crimson snakes were immediately crushed into pulp. This was an overwhelming level of strength. He shot out a few more punches, and the remaining crimson snakes finally dared not attack him further. Instead, they retreated like floodwaters, and did not return to the fiery forest, but rather started a massive migration. Ling Han drew this fiery forest straight into the Black Tower without any reservations, not leaving behind even a single tree. In this way, he would be able to endlessly harvest explosion fruit and concoct a large amount of flying fire pills. He could throw them at whoever displeased him. After sweeping through this place, Ling Han had no further need to stay on the 4th floor. He went to the end of this floor. Dojian Palace. Ling Han looked at the door plaque, and softly pronounced the words. In that short instant, he realized that he had come to a resonance with these words. The initially still words seemed to have turned into 3 swords that were dancing impassionedly, and soared up into the 9 heavens. A moment of distraction and he recollected his scattered thoughts. He shockingly discovered that the 3 words above his head had already darkened, and his cultivation level had advanced a step further. He was now in the late stage of the low extreme. If he could reach the peak stage of the low extreme in this place, then after he left, he could go into seclusion and attempt to break through to the medium extreme as he was traveling through the galaxy. Ling Han was filled with longing. There were still 5 palace halls. As long as he was just a slightest bit more fortunate, he would be able to reach his target. True enough, it was also a heavenly origin Dao fruit growing here, but it was also a mutation of it. It had been fused with something. On the 4th stage, the test was about identifying blended medicinal ingredients. Ling Han once more attained the best results, and gained another 10 days of lingering here. Going by this trend, by the time he reached the 8th floor, he would probably be able to stay here for 40 days at least. And if he still did not manage to find the palace hall of the 8th floor in that time, Ling Han would concede to fate. Putting away the jade scroll that contained the pill recipes, Ling Han arrived on the 5th floor. The skies were still dark gray, with a heavy fog, and exuded an air of death. This was a land of death. The ground was barren and silent, and there was not the slightest sign of life as far as he could see. What kind of godly medicine could be growing in such a barren, desolate land? Regarding this place, there was only a single mark on the map. Flower of Makara. Ling Han murmured. This was a level 16 godly medicine, but rather than calling it a medicine, it would be better to call it a poison. Makara was a kind of ancient word meaning death, and this poisonous flower was truly deserving of this name. When the flower bloomed, its fragrance would spread for 10,000 miles, and could kill everything in its path. Even eternal river tears would not be spared. Smelling the fragrance of this flower would signify an eternal slumber. The value of this poisonous flower lay in the fact that if one could pluck this flower before it bloomed, he would only have to use his origin power to stimulate it, and it would be able to bloom immediately, killing everyone aside from the person who held the poisonous bloom. This was terrifying. Whoever plucked this poisonous flower would possess a deadly weapon that even eternal river tear elites would shiver at. Furthermore, this just happened to be the time for the Makara flower to be about to bloom. Whoever could pluck this poisonous flower, his respective clan and branch would undoubtedly gain an astonishing power of speech, which would be enough to last forever. Should I go and take a look? Ling Han thought. In any case, he was going to roam around here, so it was on his way. He started to travel, and 4 hours later, a ravine appeared in front of him. It was completely made of dark gray rock, and there was an unusual vibrant and colorful flower in the middle. Its stem was like a human that was propping up his hands, and a flower was blooming in the midst of his hands. Its petals were tightly closed. It had yet to bloom. There were nearly 100 people standing by in the surroundings of the ravine. Chapter 1386 Appearance of a Netherworld Demonic Beas. Now was still not the best time to pluck the Makara flower. According to the Illustrated Handbook of Godly Medicine, the petals of the poisonous flower had to completely become dark purple. At this time when it was about to bloom, but not yet blooming, plucking it would maximize its poisonous effects. Thus, it was understandable that these people were all standing on guard here. The change of the petals happened very fast. At first, they were still bright red, but they very rapidly turned light purple, and going by this rate of change, they would become dark purple in color in about an hour's time. Ling Han's eyes swept over the gathered masses. All the people here were in the heavenly body tier, and Lin Yuqi was naturally among them. Looking at the hourglasses above their heads, going by the rate that they were flowing, the person with the worst result could still stay here for 2 days, and the person with the best result could stay as much as 7 days. Obviously, they had not wasted the slightest amount of time previously. They had all headed directly to this place, and their target was this flower of Makara. They had even made use of the rule that being in the palace hall would not decrease their time, and had made slight adjustments. That was why they had appeared here at such a coincidental time, guaranteeing that they would have enough time to attempt to snatch the flower. Ling Han did not appear. Instead, he stood above the valley, and planned to first observe the situation. Lin Zihong had come with the precious treasure of his clan. Obviously, his aim had also been this Makara flower, and it was mere coincidence that he had used the battle drum during his fight with Ling Han. Since the On Yuan branch could produce such a precious tool, what about the other branches? And what of the other 3 great clans? There were probably even more treasures that were like that battle drum. Merely a battle drum was already so frightening. What more when these people all brought precious treasures with them? Even if only half of them had brought precious treasures with them, Ling Han would be having a headache. Hence, he chose to sit by and watch. He had to observe the situation first. After all, he did not have too much of a longing for this kind of poisonous flower. He was confident in his own invincibility. Worst come to worst, after a few hundred years, he was sure he could cultivate to the eternal river tier, and his own battle prowess would be overwhelming by then, so what need was there for him to rely on that whatever poisonous flower? He did not deliberately conceal his figure. Thus, those like elites in the consummate level of the heavenly body tier naturally discovered his presence at the first instant. However, they did not point him out, but merely looked disdainful. He was merely in the low extreme, so what if he planned to play the Oriole? The hour quickly passed, and the flower of Makara had also reached the best time in which it could be plucked. No one made a move. Now, whoever made the first move would definitely be attacked on all sides. No matter how powerful you were, if you were attacked simultaneously by about 100 people, you would still be severely wounded. After all, of the people who dared to come here, who among them did not bring some kind of deadly weapon? This was only temporary. Very soon, a young man walked out. He wielded a large saber in his hand, his head covered with white hair. If it was not for the fact that his skin was as crystalline as jade, at first look, one would think that he was an old man. When this man walked out, there were over a dozen people walking out behind him as well. Each of them was armed with a god tool. There were sabers, swords, spears, and axes, and the most exaggerated part was that there was even one holding a torch. Ho ho, since everyone is unwilling to move, then let I, Sherbin, come and pluck this flower of Makara. He strode out, while there was over 10 people following his footsteps, forming an allied formation of both attack and defense. Obviously, these people had reached some kind of agreement beforehand. Now, the others were all guarding Sherbin. If it was just 2 to 3 soul cultivators bravely approaching, they would definitely be blasted into nothing in an instant. The precious treasures of the heaven and earth belong to the strongest. Sherbin, you are still not qualified. Another person stepped out, and similarly brought out a company of over a dozen with him as well. Bin was not the only one who had formed an alliance of defense and attack by coming to a certain agreement. Then we will resolve it with battle. The two groups of people immediately came to blows. The moment this battle began, the fight rapidly spread out, causing more and more people to join in the battle royale. Finally, the whole valley had become a complete mess. Over 100 people were fighting, all wanting to take this flower of Makara for themselves. It was obvious that there were 4 groups that were more powerful, corresponding to the respective 4 great clans. They had allied with their respective branches, and formed an alliance, advancing and retreating together. They began their charge towards that poisonous flower. And thanks to the fact that there existed 4 such groups, they restricted one another. Otherwise, if there was only one such group, even if the others had the advantage of greater numbers, they might not be able to block them. After all, their hearts were not united, so it would be difficult to use their full battle prowess. Ling Han nodded continuously as he continued to watch. These people had indeed brought deadly weapons with them. They were practically able to show the battle prowess that belonged to the middle stage or even the late stage of the pinnacle level of the heavenly body tier. But due to the limitation of their consummate level, even those in the consummate level of heavenly body tier were unable to show the battle prowess of the peak stage of the pinnacle level. At most, they only had the battle prowess of the eternal river tier. From the look of things, if one wanted to break through the restriction of the major tier, they could only do so with a saint tool. In the valley, various lights shone brilliantly. Terrifying force spread out. Ling Han was sure that even with his physique, he would be battered and mauled in a few moments if he rashly rushed into the fray. Even godly bones would very quickly break and shatter. Crack! A thunderous noise rang out from the ground. A massive ravine appeared. At first, Ling Han thought that it had been created by the fierce battle of these people, but he soon realized that that was not the case. A black-colored aura was spreading out of this ravine, and it quickly enshrouded the whole valley. Boom! A colossal long spear protruded out of the ravine, and turned into a gigantic leg that stepped on one side of the ravine. Then, another long spear stuck out, and landed on the other side of the ravine. Subsequently, a humongous creature appeared, completely black all over. It was a mantis, though it was really too huge. Previously, the 2 long spears were actually its 2 massive legs. Not only was it completely black in color, a black-colored aura was also entwined all over its body, and there was an unspeakable evil air about it. A Netherworld demonic beast. Everyone was astonished. This was not the 2-realm battlefield, so how was it that a Netherworld demonic beast appeared here? Flash! This mantis would not be concerned about their shock. Immediately, it brandished its 2 massive forelegs and slashed over. Even though it was astonishingly massive, the speed at which it struck was extraordinarily fast. In a mere flash, its forelegs had already reached one of the humans and swept across his waist. Pooh! Blood sprayed out. Firstly, that person had been in a state of shock, and secondly, this slash had really been too fast. It could completely match Ling Han's lightning sword technique. Thus, that man did not even have the chance to parry, and was directly severed into 2 halves. He released a scream of agony. The blood that sprayed from the 2 halves of his body actually turned black in an instant, and it could be seen that the black-colored aura was endlessly expanding on his body. In an instant, his flesh and blood had withered. The regulations of the heaven and earth of the Netherworld represented destruction. His spirit left his body, and his god tool was activated. It wrapped around his divine sense and fled in panic. If he was hit with another slash, his form and spirit would both be destroyed. This scene happened in a mere instant. All of them were heavenly body tier elites. Naturally, they immediately regained their composure. They brandished their respective god tools and began to attack that mantis. Now was naturally not the time for internal conflict. Furthermore, this mantis was obviously incredibly powerful. If they still did not unite against this external foe, it was probable that all of them would be killed off one after another. A great battle began. This mantis was truly very powerful. Its cultivation level should have reached the late stage of the pinnacle level. It stood strong against the united attack of about 100 people all on its own, and still did not fall into a disadvantageous position, proving its overwhelmingly powerful strength. This comes from a Chinese idiom. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind basically. It means that they would be aiming for the poisonous flower, unaware of the greater danger that the MC would be posing to them. Chapter 1387. Have you seen my dog? The 100 or so heavenly body tier elites all unleashed their most powerful attacks. To say nothing of the Netherworld, they would still crush this praying mantis even if it had come from the immortal realm. It actually dared to prevent them from retrieving the godly medicine. Numerous powerful god tools were activated, all of them drawing on their user's origin power or even lifespan as they unleashed devastating attacks. The formidable might of these attacks caused even Ling Han's heart to palpitate in apprehension. This praying mantis was incredibly close to reaching the Eternal River tier. A series of frenzied attacks rained down on the praying mantis. The 100 or so cultivators were all wielding Eternal River tier god tools, so even if they couldn't unleash might at the Eternal River tier, the attacks that they launched were still incredibly powerful. In any case, the praying mantis wasn't at the Eternal River tier, either. Thus, it wasn't long before the praying mantis was riddled with wounds. Its body was bathed in black-colored blood that evaporated into clouds of black aura. This black aura appeared extremely uncanny as it swirled in the air. If this were the outside world, the behavior of both humans and demonic beasts would generally be the same. If they couldn't defeat their enemies, they would simply turn around and flee. In this mystery realm, however, the demonic beasts were all a little stubborn. The praying mantis refused to retreat, instead fighting with all of its might. In fact, it was still fairly threatening, managing to severely wound several people and obliterate their physical bodies. However, it had been unable to kill the cultivators in one strike. Thus, it had allowed their divine sense to escape. In any case, these people had already lost their chance to continue fighting for the godly medicine. The praying mantis managed to defend itself surprisingly well. A day passed, yet it still hadn't been killed by the cultivators. The cultivators all wore grave expressions. They could only remain on the 5th level for a limited amount of time. After a short while, a portion of them would be booted out of the mystery realm, having reached the time limit assigned to them. With them becoming weaker, it wasn't impossible that the demonic beast would counterattack and regain the upper hand. Work together to defeat the demonic beast. Otherwise, none of us will obtain that godly medicine. Someone shouted. Agreed. The others shouted in agreement. Although a single clan and a single branch would become incredibly powerful as a result of obtaining the Makara flower, the overall strength and stability of the Treasure Forest Pavilion would also improve as a result. This was something that would benefit all of the 4 major clans. The cultivators stopped working against each other. Instead, they formed a group formation to unleash the full potential of their battle prowess. With this sudden shift in tactic, the already struggling praying mantis was instantly pushed beyond its limits. Under the frenzied torrent of attacks, it wasn't long before its 2 blade-like forelegs were blasted off its body. Immediately afterward, a gaping hole was blasted out in the back of its head. This was a fatal blow. The gigantic praying mantis crashed to the ground, its black blood flowing freely and releasing a sinister stench. With this black blood seeping into the earth, this desolate land even more so wouldn't be able to produce any other godly medicine. However, following the death of the praying mantis, the alliance that had just been formed also crumbled in an instant. The cultivators descended into a melee again, everyone fighting to obtain the Makara flower. Ling Han had watched on this entire time, finding the battle incredibly boring. In the current situation, it would be tremendously difficult for him to sneak over and pluck the poisonous flower for himself. In any case, he wasn't all that interested in obtaining the Makara flower. As such, he decided to leave and explore somewhere else. Right at this moment, however, an indescribable chill suddenly gripped at his heart. Cold sweat instantly formed on his forehead, trickling down his face like a stream. A shadow had suddenly materialized on the ground, right next to his body. Someone had actually sneaked up from behind him without him knowing. Ling Han almost entered the Black Tower right away. However, he forcefully suppressed the urge to do so. If this person had wanted to attack him, they would have done so without allowing him to discover their existence. Even so, he still turned around extremely slowly and carefully. During this process, Ling Han's entire back was already drenched in sweat. He felt as if there were a boundless mountain weighing down on his back. Ling Han knew that the person behind him was definitely powerful beyond belief. Otherwise, just the mere feeling of danger alone couldn't cause him to feel such apprehension and pressure. After a long time, he finally managed to turn around fully. In this instant, everything before him seemed eerily quiet. The battle below was still raging in its earth-shattering ways, yet it was as if he had gone completely deaf. A person stood before him. However, was this truly a person? This should have been an old man, with his beard already snow-white. However, in an uncanny twist, this old man didn't have any eyeballs, with only 2 cavities remaining where his eyes should have been. His eye sockets were eerily black, and it was as if they could engulf all matter. He was dressed in a faint yellow Tao robe that was brimming with an aura of ancient Tao and immortality. However, because of his eyes, his entire appearance was indescribably unsettling. Ling Han had already been drenched in sweat. However, upon seeing this old man, he now felt as if even his breath were going to stop. This old man also saw Ling Han turn around, and he asked, "Where's my dog? Have you seen my dog?" If this were any other situation, Ling Han would definitely burst into laughter upon hearing this question. However, he was stunned to discover that this old man didn't have any teeth either. No. Not only did he not have teeth, but he didn't have a tongue or throat, either. He didn't have anything. Looking at the old man's empty eye sockets again, a spine-chilling speculation suddenly flashed through Ling Han's mind. This old man, he isn't a sheet of human skin, is he? Even with his courage and bravery, this still caused goosebumps to form all over his body. He forcefully composed himself and replied, "This junior hasn't seen senior's dog." "Oh, you haven't seen it? Then I'll ask someone else," the old man said. He walked past Ling Han and calmly strode down the cliff, entering the valley below. He didn't look very quick, yet he was actually able to cover several kilometers with a single stride. He could penetrate through space. Ling Han was stunned. However, when his gaze settled on the back of the old man's head, he couldn't help but feel even more stunned. This was because there was an extremely clear slit on the back of the old man's head. He could clearly see that this old man was only a sheet of bloody skin. What the hell is this? This old man was only a sheet of skin, yet he could still run around like a normal person. Moreover, he possessed a tremendous power that could astonish even heaven and earth. Not only that, but his temperament was also strange. His question of, "Have you seen my dog?" was like a joke, only that no one would ever find it funny. They would only feel a boundless chill run down their spine. Meanwhile, the uninvited guest approached the elites that were locked in an intense battle down in the valley. Han Tao was a rising star of the Han clan. He had only cultivated of 900,000 or so years, yet he had already reached the consummate level of the heavenly body tier. Of course, his cultivation speed was only so quick because he had received special nurturing from his clan. All of their investment was for this battle right now. It was a shame that although he was talented and powerful, the other clans and branch families had also invested a great deal in their younger generation. As such, when it came to cultivation level, he didn't possess any advantage over the others. This was the case even though he had brought the most valuable treasure of his clan along. Just as he was feeling irritated and annoyed, a voice suddenly sounded from next to his ear, asking, "Where's my dog? Have you seen my dog?" "Dog your mom." Han Tao was already feeling this *T at this moment. Now that someone was asking such a strange question next to his ear, he almost flared up in wild rage. However, he was a prodigy after all, so he was instantly frightened still the very next instant. It was as if his blood had been frozen in his veins. Who is this? They actually managed to approach me without me realizing? He was astounded, and he couldn't help but shiver in terror. He then slowly turned around, only to see a white-bearded old man who had bloody sockets for eyes. This was indescribably terrifying. Even though he was a heavenly body tier elite who had experienced countless dangers, he was still barely able to stop himself from calling out for his mother at this instant. This wasn't because he was weak, but rather because this old man was far too sinister. He was silently affecting his emotions. Just then, Ling Han had also gone weak at the knees in fright. This had nothing to do with one's mental state, but had everything to do with this old man's overwhelming power. Chapter 1388 The Uncanny Human Skin Old Man. However, Han Tao didn't possess a mental fortitude as powerful as Ling Han's. He involuntarily took a few steps back. "Where's my dog? Have you seen my dog?" The old man shuffled forward, almost sticking his face into Han Tao's face. Han Tao could clearly make out every detail of the old man's face, that pale skin, those bloody eye sockets, and that empty mouth. At this instant, a thought suddenly surged into his mind: human skin. He was petrified, and his hair instantly stood on ends. His heart started to beat wildly as if it were about to explode. At his cultivation level, there were already few things that could actually affect his emotions. Right now, however, he had been scared out of his wits. His face was as white as a sheet. His knees buckled, and he couldn't help but crumple to the floor. "Where's my dog? Have you seen my dog?" the old man asked. He wasn't willing to give up, and he continued to press Han Tao for an answer. At the same time, he even extended his arms toward Han Tao, his long and slender fingers as smooth as jade. However, his body was radiating with sinister killing intent. Han Tao finally came to his sense, shaking his head vigorously and answering, "No, I haven't seen it." "Oh." A look of disappointment washed over the old man's face, and he said, "Then I'll ask someone else." With a single stride, he arrived beside someone else. This old man was definitely a supreme elite. His aura was petrifying, and just being near him would cause one to feel boundless terror. Although the people here were all heavenly body tier elites, they were no different from ordinary people in the eyes of this old man. Many people were like Han Tao, collapsing to the ground in fright when they were approached by the old man. In fact, these people were already the fortunate ones. Some people were scared silly, not coming to their senses and giving an answer even after being questioned by the old man 3 times. When the old man came across such people, he would reach over and ruthlessly snap their necks. Moreover, the divine sense of these people didn't escape their bodies. Instead, they were obliterated along with their bodies. After a short while, the intense battle in the valley ground to a halt. Everyone stared at the old man in shock and terror. In fact, they didn't even have the courage to flee. This was the suppression of a transcendent being. He was like a beast king who wanted to engulf the 100 beasts below him. The beasts might want to flee, but they wouldn't possess the courage to do so. They could only stay still and be willingly consumed by the beast king. Fortunately, this old man wasn't a human-eating beast, nor was he someone who killed others indiscriminately. The old man would only kill people in irritation if they failed to answer him after being questioned 3 times. If one couldn't even answer such a simple question, then it was purely their own fault if they were killed by the old man. Everyone was pale with fright as they looked at the old man. Why was there such a powerful being in this place? No, this wasn't a being. It was a sheet of human skin. However, just a sheet of human skin alone was already this powerful, so just how powerful was this person in his peak condition? However, in the countless years that this mystery realm had existed, they had never heard of the existence of such an uncanny sheet of skin before. The old man questioned the elites one by one. After questioning everyone, he walked before the Makara flower, cocking his head as he took a glance at it. "This flower is a little familiar," he mumbled to himself. Under the watchful gazes of the elite, he reached over and plucked the flower. He then stuffed it into his mouth and chewed for a while before finally swallowing it. The elites were all stunned. One had to realize that the Makara flower was potent enough to poison even elites at the consummate level of the eternal river tier to death once it fully blossomed. However, the old man had swallowed it whole. Although the Makara flower hadn't blossomed yet, its poison was definitely still contained within its bud. By chewing and swallowing it, wasn't the old man seeking death? However, this old man was only a sheet of skin anyway. Theoretically speaking, he was already long dead. So, how could he be killed a second time? Moreover, this old man was unfathomably powerful. As such, perhaps this poisonous flower wouldn't be able to kill him even if he were truly alive. The Makara flower was eaten by the old man, and no one dared to object. Right now, the elites only wished to leave this place alive. To say nothing of eating the Makara flower, the elites wouldn't complain even if the old man were to eat all of their ancestral weapons. After eating the Makara flower, the old man stood still and didn't move anymore. It was as if he had been killed by the poison. However, after a short moment, he glanced in the direction of Ling Han. With a single stride, he teleported through space and arrived beside Ling Han. The heavenly body tier elites were stunned silly again. Teleporting through space was one of the most difficult tasks. This pertained to the regulations of space and was something that only Genesis tier saints had the right to learn. This was also the reason why only Genesis tier saints could travel throughout the universe. It was because they were tremendously quick. Otherwise, they could only await death amid the lonely and desolate expanse of the universe. This sheet of human skin was actually at the Genesis tier. "There's a familiar smell on your body," the old man said as he stared at Ling Han with his empty and petrifying eye sockets. Ling Han's hair instantly stood on ends. "I'm a human, and you're a sheet of human skin. There isn't a shred of familiarity between us, okay?" He wanted to flip the bird at the old man, yet decided against it upon thinking of his tremendous power. It would most likely be useless even if he dragged the notionless saint out from the Black Tower. "What guidance would Senior like to offer?" Ling Han asked respectfully. The old man shuffled closer and took another sniff of Ling Han's body. A confused expression spread across his face. He then scratched his head and asked, "Where's my dog? Have you seen my dog?" "Fine, we're back to this H*T again." "No," Ling Han replied with a shake of his head. "Then I'll ask someone else." The old man arrived at the valley with a single stride. He then tortured the elites with another round of questioning. Ling Han hurriedly fled from the scene. He didn't want to see that crazy old man again. Strange. Although few people can make it to the 5th level, the total number of people who have made it here is definitely significant, especially after hundreds of millions of years. Yet, there's never been any news of this strange old man. It's extremely likely that he's only appeared here recently. "Hang on," the old man said that there was a familiar smell on my body. If he wasn't speaking nonsense. A speculation suddenly appeared in Ling Han's mind. Perhaps this old man was the owner of the 4th level. However, due to some circumstances, he has been skinned alive. Yet, he's far too powerful, so he can still wander around even though he's only a sheet of skin. In fact, he even has some instinct, an instinct to look for his dog or whatever. In the past, he was probably in a slumber or unable to move. Only after I achieved resonance and absorbed the power from the words on the palace of the 4th level, was the old man finally awakened. In that case, it's understandable that the old man can smell a familiar scent on my body. Of course, all of this was only Ling Han's wild speculation. It would be almost impossible to verify whether his speculation was accurate or not. In any case, he had fled from the scene, not wanting to play the game of find my dog with the old man any longer. He wasn't interested in exploring this level for other godly medicines, either. This level was filled with a lifeless aura, and any godly medicine that he could find would probably be like the Makara flower. The main use of these godly medicines was to poison and kill others. They were completely useless to cultivation. Thus, after a few hours, Ling Han arrived at the palace of the 5th level. Thousand Water Palace. However, these 3 words were already dim. It was clear that someone had already absorbed the power within these words. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh as he walked into the palace. Before him was a heavenly origin Dao fruit. This fruit was already close to maturity, and it exuded a faint fragrance that could excite one's origin power. It would make one feel as if they were about to break through. A stunned expression spread across Ling Han's face. He hadn't experienced such feelings while on the 4th level. If all 9 palaces were planted with these heavenly origin Dao fruit, and if their levels of maturity were all the same, then this signified that the 9 heavenly origin Dao fruits were already on the verge of maturity. Only a few days had passed, yet the fruit was already oozing with a pleasant fragrance. Could it be that some unimaginable transformation is truly going to take place in the Medicine King's cave this time around? "This smell is slightly familiar," a voice suddenly said from right behind Ling Han. Chapter 1389 Driven Mad. Ling Han involuntarily tensed up. Then, a feeling of exasperation swept through him. This was clearly the human skin old man. Although Ling Han had fled as quickly as he could, he clearly couldn't outrun someone who had already grasped the regulations of space. The old man had arrived not long after him. The old man wore a blank expression as he stared at the heavenly origin Dao fruit. It was as if he were trying to recall some memories, yet couldn't recall them for the life of him. This was understandable. He didn't even have a brain, so how the fuck could he recall anything? The old man suddenly strode forward after staring at the heavenly origin Dao fruit for a moment. He reached over and was just about to touch the heavenly origin Dao fruit. Not good. Ling Han hurriedly shot back in retreat. This Saint King Great Herb was protected by a supreme killing formation that could kill even Saint Kings. If he were swept up in its attacks, he would definitely be blasted into smithereens in an instant. Boom! The killing formation was triggered, and sure enough, it directed its devastating attacks at the human skin old man. Hundreds of millions of light beams burst forth, each of them possessing the full power of a great saint. With so many of them attacking in unison, they indeed possessed the might to kill even Saint Kings. Unless one had reached the pinnacle level of the Saint King, it would be simply impossible for them to withstand the might of this formidable attack. Pang 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 pang. Beams of light exploded wildly one after another. Xiao! A figure was sent flying back, and it lightly landed on the ground, as delicately as a butterfly. It was a sheet of human skin. The might of the killing formation dissipated, returning to the calm from before. Whew! As if it had inhaled a breath of air, the human skin rapidly expanded again, quickly regaining its human form. The old man reappeared, his expression still blank. It was as if he didn't know what had just occurred. Ling Han's face twitched. That's a supreme killing formation. One that can kill even Saint Kings. Yet, this old man had merely been sent flying back? And he's completely unscathed? If this old man were at the Genesis tier, then he had definitely reached the pinnacle level of the pinnacle level. In fact, it was possible that he was even stronger than the Genesis tier. Severing mundane tier. Where's my dog? Have you seen my dog? The old man asked Ling Han. Fine, he's at it again. Ling Han hurriedly shook his head before walking toward the passageway that led to the 6th level. Right now, he only had one aim in mind, that was to harvest everything of value in the 9th level of the Mystery Realm. He would then say goodbye to this place forever. The examination on the 6th level finally tested him on refining pills. A pill recipe floated down before him. However, he was only allowed to fail 10 times. If he failed all 10 times, he would be immediately booted out of the Mystery Realm. On the contrary, the fewer times he failed, and the less time he spent, the better his result would be. Ling Han grabbed the pill recipe and took a glance at it. He discovered that this was only a level 5 alchemical pill. It wouldn't be too difficult to refine. However, this was a pill recipe that he had never seen before. With his prowess as the Alchemy Emperor, he would only fail a maximum of 2 to 3 times when refining such a low-level alchemical pill, even if it was completely new to him. However, Ling Han didn't hastily begin to refine the alchemical pill straight away. Instead, he mulled over the unique qualities of all the medicinal ingredients that were required for this alchemical pill. Right now, he had already reached the stage of great accomplishment when it came to identifying medicinal ingredients and recalling their unique properties. These medicinal ingredients intertwined in his mind, their qualities and clashes all playing out before him. This allowed him to understand how these medicinal ingredients work together or against each other. A few hours passed, and he finally reopened his eyes. Although he had never attempted to refine this pill before, he was confident that he could succeed in one try. Not only that, but he was confident that he could refine this pill to perfection. This was because he had a comprehensive understanding of all the medicinal ingredients that were required for this pill. He had already simulated the refinement process of this pill in his mind. He retrieved his cauldron and started to refine the alchemical pill. Sure enough, he was able to succeed in one go. Not only did he manage to reach a state of perfection and concoct 10 pills, but each pill had also reached their optimal condition, with not a shred of their essence going to waste. However, even with such a result, he was only given an extra 9 days' time. Among the pill recipes that he received as a reward, the highest level pill recipe was also only level 19. It was clear that his alchemical pills still hadn't been perfect enough. As such, he hadn't received the most valuable reward. Ling Han wasn't disappointed by this. After all, he had only spent half a day familiarizing himself with the pill recipe. He had never seen this pill recipe before, and there was simply nothing more he could do about this. The stone room disappeared, and what appeared before him was the 6th level. Gold and silver light dazzled his eyes. This was a metallic world, with golden mountains and silver mountains stretching as far as the eye could see. If a mortal human were to come here, they would definitely go wild with excitement. In fact, even Ling Han was delighted by this sight. This was because it was extremely likely that he could find high-level godly metal in this place. "Where's my dog? Have you seen my dog?" This was already a familiar voice and a familiar question. The human skin old man was like a piece of chewing gum that was stuck to the bottom of Ling Han's shoe. He appeared beside Ling Han once again. "Fuck. Is there any end to this? Why have you set your eyes on me?" Ling Han was completely speechless. He was being followed by this sheet of human skin, which was also incredibly powerful. Even though he was extremely daring, he still couldn't help but feel an icy chill in his heart. In fact, he even felt the urge to absorb this sheet of human skin into the Black Tower. However, he couldn't guarantee that this would succeed. If he failed, and the old man became hostile toward him, then he would have really gotten himself into a pinch. Thus, he decided to leave the old man alone. In any case, the old man was only nagging him, nothing more. "No," Ling Han replied. He then rushed forward and started to harvest the godly medicines. "There's a familiar smell on your body," the old man said again. He was following Ling Han like a shadow. As they advanced, the old man would occasionally become confused and wear a blank expression. However, whenever he came to his senses from such a state, he would relentlessly repeat his question and ask about his dog. He would then say that there was a familiar smell on Ling Han's body. Like a child playing house, he would delight himself in repeating these questions again and again. Ling Han felt mentally fatigued. Regardless of how patient he was, he still felt like he was going to be driven mad after being asked the same question thousands upon thousands of times. However, this wasn't without its benefits. With this old man beside him, the demonic beasts of this level were all scared *+ when he neared them. This allowed Ling Han to easily pluck the godly medicines. However, the old man also had a habit of plucking high-level godly medicines whenever he saw them. Not only that, but he was also crude in the way he plucked them. In any case, he would eat these godly medicines straight away. This rendered Ling Han speechless. On their journey through the 6th level, the most valuable godly medicine that he had obtained was only a level 10 godly medicine. Those that were above this level had all been eaten by the old man. He couldn't snatch these godly medicines from the old man, nor did he dare to. Although the old man looked easy to deal with right now, being confused and all, it wasn't like Ling Han hadn't seen him killing the heavenly body tier elites before. He hadn't blinked as he killed them. When Ling Han finished exploring this level, he went to the palace that lay at its very end. Midnight Heart Palace. Ling Han was delighted to find that these 3 words hadn't gone dim yet. However, when he tried to achieve resonance with the power that lay within them, he discovered that he was completely unable to do so. The old man didn't press Ling Han to hurry up, and he also sat down beside him. An uncanny sight appeared. The 3 words were aroused, yet their mystical power flowed into the body of the old man. However, no transformation occurred. This was only natural. The old man was far too powerful, so to him, this measly power was simply like a drop of water in a vast ocean. As such, he naturally didn't undergo any transformation. What a waste! Ling Han almost hammered the ground in exasperation. "You're already so powerful, so what's the point of competing with me for this mystical power? Where's my dog? Have you seen my dog?" After absorbing the mystical power, the old man immediately started to repeat this question again. Ling Han was too tired to even feel angry. In fact, even he had become a little curious now. What breed of dog had the old man lost? After all, it was actually special enough for this old man to remember, even after his death. The heavenly origin Dao fruit appeared again. It was still the same kind of fruit, yet it was a little different again. The old man was fearless as he charged over once more. He was ruthlessly attacked by the killing formation, yet he was pushed out of it completely unscathed. After lying on the ground for a moment, he started to ask about his dog again. Ling Han was driven so crazy that he genuinely felt like killing someone. "Can't you say anything else?" The examination for the 6th level tested him on reconstructing medicinal ingredients. To Ling Han, such a task was incredibly simple. In fact, he wouldn't be afraid even if there were derived medicinal ingredients. Upon completing this examination, he successfully extended his stay in the Medicine King's cave for another 10 days. In addition to this, he also received 20 new pill recipes. Chapter 1390 the 9th level. Ling Han entered the 7th level, and sure enough, the human skin old man didn't disappoint him, appearing once again. He wore an earnest expression as he asked for the whereabouts of his dog again. Ling Han pointed into the distance and said, "I think I saw your dog there." The old man immediately took a single stride and disappeared into the distance. Ling Han wasn't worried that the old man would become mad upon not finding his dog. After all, it wouldn't be long before he lost all of his memory again. This was only normal. He didn't have a brain, so how could he remember past events? In any case, the old man was only living on as a sheet of human skin because he was far too powerful. However, he could only keep his memories for 30 minutes at most. When this time passed, his memory would expire too. This would then repeat itself, over and over again. When the old man found Ling Han again, he would have definitely forgotten Ling Han's lie already. In any case, the 7th level appeared extremely normal. There were blue mountains and limpid waters, and everything appeared tranquil and serene. In fact, it appeared a little too tranquil and serene. There was no roaring of beasts, and there was no screeching of birds. The buzz and chatter of insects couldn't be heard, either. Ling Han continued to stroll through the 7th level. Whoosh! A branch suddenly whipped toward him, the leaves on the branch opening up like mouths. Inside these mouths were rows of pointy spikes, much like the teeth of some predator. This was a man-eating tree. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Several more branches whipped toward Ling Han, trying to entangle and trap him. They could then use their razor-sharp teeth to tear through his body and suck in his flesh and blood. Ling Han couldn't help but chuckle, and said, "Go ahead and try." He stood there unmoving, allowing the branches to tightly wrap around his body. Countless leaves bit at him. However, what kind of physique did he possess? Not only were the spikes unable to penetrate his skin, but they were even shattered as a result. "You've chosen the wrong target." The lightning divine pattern on Ling Han's left hand lit up. Crackle. An arc of brilliant white lightning that had a slight blue tinge to it immediately shot out. Pa 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 pa. The branches of the man-eating tree were instantly blown into bits. The power of lightning was innately transcendent above the 5 elements of the world. Moreover, the lightning that Ling Han had unleashed possessed the might of heavenly tribulation, and was far more powerful than ordinary lightning. After unleashing several bolts of lightning, the man-eating tree was obliterated until there was only a stub of the tree trunk remaining. Ling Han sliced the tree trunk apart and retrieved a heart-like orb from within. This was the heart of a tree, and this was where the essence of a man-eating tree was contained. It was incredibly nutritious. He was already at the heavenly body tier, so such tree hearts could barely provide him with any more growth. However, the people in the Black Tower would find this extremely useful, especially his disciples. After all, Ding Ping and Jiuyao still hadn't reached the Sun-Moon tier. In any case, Feng Peiyun and Murong Qing were also in desperate need of such nutritious items. So, the more of these tree hearts he could obtain, the better. Ling Han continued to explore the 7th level, and he obtained a large amount of tree hearts as he did so. However, he wasn't successful each and every time. There was a time that he came across a man-eating tree that was at the Eternal River tier. This tree had been in hibernation, and he had immediately turned around to leave upon noticing it. If he provoked this tree, he would definitely be reduced to fertilizer, unless he immediately escaped into the Black Tower. Half a day passed, and the human skin old man finally returned. As before, his first question was about his dog. However, Ling Han had already discovered the method to deal with him. He randomly pointed in some direction again, sending the old man on a merry trip into the distance. He explored the 7th level for 3 days before going to the palace that lay at its very end. Abundant Sea Palace. These 3 words were still dazzling and filled with power. Xiao. The human skin old man silently appeared again. "Your dog is over there." Ling Han was afraid that the old man would absorb the power of the words again, so he immediately gave his answer before the old man could even question him. At the same time, he randomly pointed into the distance. The old man was slightly dazed. This person was answering his question before he had even asked it? He didn't reply, and immediately strode away in the direction that Ling Han was pointing in. Meanwhile, Ling Han sat down and tried to achieve resonance with the 3 words. 3 days passed, and a shudder suddenly traveled through his body. A burst of mystical power started to funnel into his body, causing his cultivation to elevate explosively. Success! This was very strange. Some words he could achieve resonance with immediately, while with other words he could do so after some time. However, there were also some that he couldn't achieve resonance with no matter how hard he tried. Peak stage of the low extreme. He would spend some time stabilizing and reinforcing his cultivation after he left this mystery realm. He would then return to the joint peace planet to break through to the medium extreme. There was already no need to guess, and he was certain that the great herb in the abundant sea palace was the heavenly origin Dao fruit. The old man naturally came to challenge the killing formation again, displaying the true meaning of a freakish defense. The 7th level examined his pill refinement skills again. This time, however, he was provided with a level 7 pill recipe. Ling Han spent a long time to fully digest this pill recipe. Although he eventually succeeded in one try again, also reaching a level of perfection, he only won 4 more days of time. He was also rewarded with far fewer pill recipes than before, the pill recipes only going from level 1 to level 8. Right now, Ling Han was filled with curiosity. He was about to enter the 8th level, the level where no one had ever been able to reach the palace that lay at its end before. The stone room collapsed, and what appeared before Ling Han was a misty and unclear world. He was struck by a headache immediately upon entering this world. In fact, there was even blood beginning to flow out from his nose. There's poison. The atmosphere of the 8th level was suffused with poison. No wonder no one had ever managed to reach its end before. Even with a physique as powerful as Ling Han's, he still couldn't prevent the poisonous mist from penetrating his body. "Where's my dog? Have you seen my dog?" the old man asked Ling Han. He arrived in front of Ling Han just as expected. Strangely, however, it was as if the poisonous mist didn't dare to near his body. The air was clear for a radius of 3 meters around the old man. Ling Han grimaced before shuffling closer to the old man, using him to avoid the poison. At the same time, he channeled his origin power, forcing the poison that he had already inhaled out from his body. This was quite easy to do, especially since he wasn't being attacked by the poisonous mist anymore. Otherwise, if the old man wasn't here, he would be drowned in poison once he expended all of his origin power. At that time, he would be as good as dead. This old man had finally become useful for once. Ling Han advanced, and the old man followed beside him. This time, Ling Han didn't point in some random direction to send the old man away again. Instead, he simply shook his head, saying that he didn't know where the doggy was. And so, he explored this level with the old man, looking for the location of the palace. Because there was no map to guide him this time, he could only explore the 8th level blindly. After wandering around for 9 days, the two of them finally found the palace of the 8th level. Along the way, Ling Han also obtained some useful items. However, these were all poisonous medicinal ingredients. In any case, the high-level medicinal ingredients had all been eaten by the old man. 7-star palace. Ling Han didn't dare to trick the old man away, so the power in these 3 words was naturally absorbed by the old man. The 8th heavenly origin Dao fruit. Ling Han briskly walked over to take the exam of this level. He wanted to see what lay in the 9th level. This time, he had to reconstruct blended medicinal ingredients. Once again, Ling Han achieved a perfect result on this examination. He wore an expression of eager anticipation as the 9th level finally materialized before him. However, his expression of eager anticipation slowly turned into one of shock and surprise. This was because the 9th level was merely a small stretch of desolate land. There was only a small mountain before him and a palace to his side. Compared to the 8th level, this 9th level was countless times smaller. Astonishment spread across Ling Han's face as he gazed at the small mountain. Its shape was far too strange. Instead of a mountain, it looked more like a resting beast, an incredibly large beast. In the immortal realm, such large demonic beasts weren't a rare sight. In fact, there were even some that were hundreds of times larger than this. Whoosh, whoosh. Gusts of wind howled by in a very rhythmic manner. However, Ling Han's expression became even stranger. These gusts of wind bore an eerie resemblance to snoring. He walked to the other side of the mountain, and he couldn't help but grimace. Sure enough, this wasn't a mountain. Instead, it was a ginormous demonic beast. It was pitch black in color, and its tongue lay hanging out of its mouth. In fact, it was even drooling. My dog! My dog! The human skin old man suddenly exclaimed. He reached toward the mountain dog. Chapter 1391 Large Black Dog. Looking closely, this was indeed a dog. A large black dog that was countless times larger than ordinary dogs. The old man's hand came into contact with a large black dog, triggering a burst of dazzling light and causing 9 brilliant halos to surge from its body. The large black dog shuddered and instantly stopped snoring. It opened its eyes, appearing dazed at first. Then, upon seeing the old man, a tense look flashed across its eyes. You scared the sh*t out of Grandpa Dog. What the hell? The large black dog suddenly jumped up and raced away. However, the 9th level was far too small, so he immediately crashed into the boundary and was sent reeling back. My dog! The old man continued to reach over to stroke the large black dog. Holy *t! Save me! What the hell? The large black dog continued to avoid the old man, running in circles around the level. However, he was far too ginormous, and the space in the 9th level was far too limited. It wasn't long before he ran a full circle around the level and caught up to the human skin old man from behind. I'll shrink! The large black dog shook his body and instantly started to shrink in size, becoming as large as a normal dog. His fur bristled as he frantically fled from the old man. Ling Han couldn't help but cluck in amusement. The old man had relentlessly harped on about his dog, and sure enough, there truly was a dog here. The old man continued to pursue the dog. He had grasped the regulations of space, so he could cover dozens of kilometers in a single stride even though he didn't appear very quick. He reached over to grab the tail of the large black dog. Save me! The large black dog exclaimed upon seeing Ling Han. He immediately dashed toward Ling Han. Killing intent oozed from the old man, and he said, You dare to steal my dog? Tears of blood rolled out from his empty eye sockets. This was a petrifying sight. Motherfucker! I'm innocent! Ling Han immediately started to flee from the large black dog. However, the large black dog was far too evil, and he continued to chase after Ling Han. Fuck! *t*y dog, why are you following me? Ling Han shouted. What is life without exercise? Running can keep one healthy, the large black dog said seriously. It was clear that he didn't feel any guilt at all. Fine, this is another degenerate being. Ling Han really wanted to facepalm. Why couldn't he come across more normal beings? Return my dog. Tears of blood were streaming down the old man's face, each drop that splattered to the ground transforming into a lake of blood. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before this level became a sea of blood. *t*y dog, that old man is clearly your owner. Hurry up and leave with him. Ling Han exclaimed. Pay! Yours *tty dog. Your entire family consists of *tty digs. If you want to follow him so badly, then please go and do so. I have no relationship with this human-skinned monster. The large black dog shouted in a strange voice. Meanwhile, he continued to run as fast as the wind. This large black dog was truly a special breed. He was only at the heavenly body tier, yet his speed was no slower than Ling Han's. Fuck that dog. Ling Han was speechless, and he could only continue to flee from the large black dog. Woof. You want to fuck me? See how I bite you to death. The large black dog immediately widened its maws and bit toward Ling Han, catching Ling Han's leg. Ow wow! Stinky brat, what in the world are you made out of? Why are you as tough as divine metal? Ling Han bared his teeth in pain. His physique was indeed tough, yet this large black dog was also a very special breed. His bite had actually caused him to feel slight pain. *tty dog, let go of me! Let go of me! Growling, I'm going to fuck you to death. No, bite you to death. The large black dog was a dog who would harbor grudges for a very long time. Ling Han frantically shook his leg and shouted, *tty dog, let go. The old freak is catching up. The large black dog was incredibly heavy, and this greatly affected his speed. However, the grip of this dog was truly astonishing, and he couldn't be shaken off no matter what. I'll let go if you pay me a compensation of 10,000 pieces of divine metal. The large black dog made an exorbitant demand. Fuck off. Ling Han felt that he was already very good at swindling people. However, compared to this dog, he was like a man of great morals. Even the old ginseng and rabbit couldn't compare to this large black dog. As the saying went, there were skies beyond skies, and there were mountains beyond mountains. The blood tears of the old man had already formed numerous lakes around the 9th level. Moreover, they were starting to connect together now, transforming from numerous small lakes into one large lake. At this rate, it would only be a matter of time before the entire 9th level was covered in a sea of blood. Not only that, but these bodies of blood were also extremely terrifying. Ling Han didn't dare to run over them at all. With just a single glance, he could already sense the harrowing murderous aura that was emanating from the blood. This blood could definitely dissolve him in an instant. He ran through the air, yet the large black dog's incredible weight was significantly slowing him down. It was as if he were running with a mountain on his back. Dog, I'm about to get serious. Ling Han threw a punch toward the large black dog, even imbuing the power of heaven's lightning in his strike. Freak! The large black dog hurriedly let go of him in fright. He was indeed strong, yet he was still afraid of being struck by heaven's lightning. He would be severely wounded even if he wasn't killed. Anyhow, how could a human wield heaven's might? If he wasn't a freak, then what was he? Ling Han activated the star-plucking step and tried to keep as far away from the large black dog as possible. However, if he genuinely ran out of options, he would immediately enter the Black Tower. He naturally couldn't sacrifice his life for the sake of keeping the Black Tower a secret. However, the large black dog was truly evil, still continuing to pursue Ling Han. Meanwhile, the human skin old man chased after the two of them. The blood lakes merged and drowned out the entire 9th level. The old man was far too powerful, and even the palace of the 9th level was unable to withstand his power. The walls of the palace were rapidly eroded amid the tumultuous sea of blood. Has the time already arrived? A childish voice suddenly said. This voice slowly reverberated throughout the entire level. The old man immediately stopped, and the hair of the large black dog all stood on ends. Meanwhile, Ling Han wore a very strange expression. He realized that he had been swept up in some very mysterious matter. Why me again? A column of light burst from the palace, immediately evaporating the sea of blood. The desolate land appeared before them once more. Who are you? The human skin old man asked. You should be asking, who am I? The childish voice replied. However, there was haughtiness in this voice, and it was as if it belonged to some transcendent and paramount god. Who am I? The human skin old man asked in confusion. You're the sheet of skin that I shed in my 5th life, the childish voice replied. However, this reply sent chills down Ling Han's spine. Ling Han had initially thought that the old man had been ruthlessly skinned after coming across some supremely powerful enemy. However, judging by this reply, he was a sheet of skin that had been voluntarily shed. Moreover, it was shed in the 5th life of this person. This person has already lived for 5 lives. Hang on, there are 9 levels in the Medicine King's cave. Could it be that this person created a new level with each life that he lived? Moreover, the 9 heavenly origin Tao fruits are all fused with something. Gasp! Perhaps they're fused with the body or divine sense of this person. 9 nines return to 1. What kind of freak is going to be born in this life? So, that's how it is, the human skin old man murmured. He sat down, bursts of brilliant light pulsating around his body. He was returning to Tao. He had only remained alive due to his 2 obsessions. She wanted to know who he was, and he wanted to find his dog. Now that he had found his dog and learned of his identity, these obsessive thoughts naturally evaporated into nothingness. As such, it was only natural that he'd return to Tao. After all, he wasn't a genuine living being. Ling Han felt as if he were facing a great enemy. It was extremely likely that this mysterious person had already lived through 9 lives. However, where had he obtained so many reincarnation flowers from? How did he manage to live one life after the next? Hey young man, you're overthinking things, the childish voice suddenly said. I managed to live one life after the next due to my own strength and power. However, I could only live for 1 million years in each of my previous lives. After planting and cultivating the spirits of my 9 previous lives, I managed to nurture the true body of my 10th life. During this life, I'll definitely stun the world and rewrite history. Returning to Daub essentially means accepting death. Chapter 1392 Body of 9 Lives. It doesn't matter if you don't understand. I can explain this slowly. In any case, there's still some time until I'm born into the world. Moreover, it's already been hundreds of millions of years since I last spoke. I also feel quite bored, the childish voice said. I come from a mysterious place, a place so mysterious that you'll never be able to imagine it. In that place you can possess an infinite lifespan. In that place, beings can reach the pinnacle of evolution. One day, however, I was banished from that place. I didn't commit any wrong, and I was simply banished because my father had sided with the wrong people. The consequences of his mistake also ended up affecting me. I swear that I'll definitely return. After leaving that world, I was unable to resist the power of time and prevent myself from aging, even though I possessed boundless power. Thus, I took a risk and started practicing a secret technique, the 9 Deaths Heaven art. After living 9 lives and burying my 9 previous bodies, I'll finally obtain boundless glory in my 10th life. In each of my first 9 lives, I could only live for a mere 1 million years. I would then have to grab onto the tiny sliver of life as I approached eventual death. After dying 9 times, I was finally able to nurture a divine fetus. This divine fetus is the body for my 10th life. I'm sure you've already seen the heavenly origin Dao fruits planted in each level of this mysterious realm. However, you're probably unaware that a wisp of my divine sense is buried beneath each of these heavenly origin Dao fruit. After experiencing 900 million years, each of these divine senses will become tremendously powerful. When my 9 divine senses fuse, the power of my divine sense will be unparalleled, not only in the present, but also when casting our eyes into the ancient past and distant future. During this life, I'll have heaven open its eyes to me, and have earth bow its head to me. I, Gu Dawi, was a supreme genius even in my initial life. Even time has failed to kill me. I'll definitely attain glory in this life, a glory even more dazzling than what I've experienced in my first life. The childish voice of Gu Dawi reverberated around the 9th level. Oh, Ling Han replied. He finally understood what this Medicine King's cave was all about. You're from the celestial realm, correct? Pooh. If Gu Dawi were standing before Ling Han right now, his expression would definitely be one of pure shock. He was certain that the celestial realm was a supreme secret, yet the first person that he met in this life had already casually uttered its name. It was only natural that he felt stunned. His feeling of superiority vanished into smoke. Gu Dawi couldn't help but ask, "How do you know about the celestial realm?" The beings of this world definitely shouldn't have known about the existence of the celestial realm. After all, the celestial realm had been sealed off from this world countless years ago. Someone told me about it, Ling Han casually replied. He naturally wouldn't say that he even knew people from the celestial realm. Not just any random person, but people from the mighty rock palace. Gu Dawi was speechless. TSK, more than one person knew about the existence of the celestial realm. This was quite a big blow to his ego. Oh, that's right. Where did this dog come from? Ling Han asked. The human skin old man had relentlessly asked him for the whereabouts of this dog before. In fact, he had repeated the same question at least tens of thousands of times. Thus, even Ling Han was curious about this dog now. During my first life, I found an egg in some ancient site of the celestial realm. Unexpectedly, this useless black dog was what hatched from it, Gu Dawi said in disdain. Woof. You're useless. Your entire family is useless. The large black dog immediately cursed in retort. He definitely wouldn't lose in a war of words. Although I still have yet to be born, and although I can only begin as mortal when I'm eventually born, this entire place is controlled by my divine sense. Once I activate my supreme formation, no one in the immortal realm will be able to withstand my power, Gu Dawi said calmly. The large black dog immediately backed down, muttering, "Wise dogs don't fight losing battles. When I leave this place, I'll definitely curse until I'm content." Ling Han felt that the large black dog was quite extraordinary. At the very least, he could cause him pain when he bit him. This was something that perhaps no other heavenly body tier elite could achieve. Just this ability alone caused Ling Han to think that the large black dog was indeed worthy of being a dog that had hatched from some egg from an ancient site of the celestial realm. However, it was quite strange that this large black dog had hatched from an egg. Had his father copulated with a swan? The large black dog immediately raised his paw and said, "Brat, there's something very wrong with your expression. Are you mentally masturbating over my father?" The observation skills of this dog are incredible. "This dog is quite strange too," Gu Daoyi said. "He actually managed to come to this place and seal his own life force. It's clear that he's only at the heavenly body tier, yet he was actually able to survive until now. However, I've already severed the karma and fate of my 9 previous lives. How about this? I'll gift this dog to you. With a companion by your side, neither of you will feel lonely in the afterlife." "Companion your mom." The large black dog immediately cursed. He turned to Ling Han and said, "Brat, hurry up and unleash whatever trump cards you have. This brat is so toxic. Destroy him. There's no need to give me face." Ling Han's expression was cold. Judging by Gu Daoyi's words, he would start from scratch once he was born. Thus, regardless of how talented he was, he would still need time to grow. However, there were 9 supreme killing formations in this mystery realm, each of which could exterminate a Saint King. Moreover, these supreme killing formations were all under the complete control of Gu Daoyi. As such, Gu Daoyi could kill them with absolute ease if he wanted to. "Since you claim invincibility in this world, what's the point of killing us?" Ling Han questioned. Unless he was forced into a dead end, he didn't want to use his black tower, especially not before an elite of the celestial realm. "In any case, we're not able to threaten you, are we?" Gu Daoyi fell silent as he mulled over this. After obtaining a 10th life, his personality had already undergone huge changes. Otherwise, with the maturity that he possessed in his first life, how could he allow others to sway his resolve? What would he care about the recognition of others? However, hundreds of millions of years of loneliness had caused him to develop a craving for recognition. Although he would be born immortal, the foundation laid out by his 9 previous lives would mean that he possessed peerless talent. Thus, it wouldn't be long before he reached the pinnacle of the immortal realm. Anyhow, could anyone from the immortal realm enter the celestial realm? No way. The gates to the celestial realm had been closed long ago. Moreover, only those who had grasped both the power of creation and power of destruction could blast open a passageway between the 2 realms. As such, he wasn't worried that Ling Han would enter the celestial realm in the future and reveal his secret. "So be it. I'll allow you 2 ants to witness the birth of my legend. I'll allow you to sing praises of my might to the world." Gu Daoyi finally reached a decision. Ling Han's mind whirred, and he said, "The Star Sand Martial Arts Academy Myriad Directions Galaxy will open within the next 100 years, and the young king tiers from the hundreds of nearby galaxies will all converge there. However, only those who have reached the heavenly body tier will have the right to enter this academy." Gu Daoyi's interest was immediately piqued. This was the beginning of his 10th life, and thus his mind was also undergoing development. As a result, he also craved fame and recognition like all young people did. If he could defeat all of the young king tiers of the world, that would naturally bring him boundless fame and glory. Ling Han chuckled in his mind. He knew that Gu Daoyi's interest had been piqued. In any case, he obviously hadn't mentioned this for the benefit of Gu Daoyi. Instead, he had mentioned it so that he could personally pummel Gu Daoyi at that time. So what if Gu Daoyi had lived 9 lives to create the foundation for his 10th life? Ling Han was confident that he was invincible against those at the same cultivation level. If anyone wanted to challenge him, he would beat them into the ground. Gu Daoyi laughed heartily, and said, "Fine, with my cultivation speed, I'll have definitely reached the heavenly body tier by that time. At that time, I'll let the beings of this world witness my true strength. You 2 can leave now. Remember, go to the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy in 100 years' time. There, you'll witness the beginning of my legend." Wang. Ling Han felt his body become heavy, and before he knew it, he was already outside the Medicine King's cave. Several powerful divine senses instantly swept over his body. These were the divine senses of Eternal River tier elites, and they made him feel as if he couldn't hide any secrets. Chapter 1393. Returning to the joint peace plane. Taking into account the time, it was very likely that the competition over the flower of Makara had already come to an end. Thus, the elites were all very attentive, carefully inspecting every heavenly body tier elite that left the mystery realm. They were all hell-bent on obtaining this poisonous flower. In fact, they had all prepared for countless years just for this one competition. Shwa shwa shwa. However, right at this moment, more and more people appeared outside the Medicine King's cave. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of people had already appeared. Everyone had been teleported out from the Medicine King's cave. Some people had been plucking godly medicines, while others had been taking examinations. Some people had also been preparing themselves in the palaces. However, without exception, they were all tossed out from the mysterious realm at this moment. This caused confusion in many people's minds. My time limit is still far from expiring. The elites were also confused. What in the world is going on? However, someone immediately recounted the appearance of the human skin old man. Of course, they also recounted how the flower of Makara had been eaten by the old man. The Eternal River tier elites were instantly stupefied. In order to obtain this flower, they had all done meticulous planning for tens of millions of years. Yet, a strange being had suddenly appeared and eaten the flower. The elites were about to go crazy. Where on earth had that elite come from? My dog? Have you seen my dog? What secret was hidden behind these words? Ling Han couldn't help but laugh in his mind. These people would never learn of the true events that had taken place inside the mystery realm. In any case, it wouldn't be long before Gu Daoyi entered the world again. At that time, the 9 levels of godly medicines would all be his property. Thus, the 4 major clans wouldn't receive any more benefits from the Medicine King's cave in the future. But why had the Medicine King's cave opened every once in a while and even rewarded the people who had entered? Ling Han didn't know why, but perhaps there was something wrong with Gu Daoyi's brain. Or perhaps he couldn't stand the feeling of loneliness. Because no one had managed to obtain the flower of Makara, the Eternal River tier elites all lost interest in inspecting the yield of the cultivators any further. After all, it was about the same every single time. Most people would bring back some low-level pill recipes, while those who were lucky would bring back some level 10 or so great herbs. How could such things interest them? As such, Ling Han was able to leave casually with the large black dog. He didn't bid farewell to Lin Yuqi, either. That woman was extremely bewitching, and it was probably best to stay as far away from her as possible. It's time to leave. The large black dog naturally wouldn't tag along with Ling Han. In any case, he was extremely eager to travel around anyway. There was no sign that he was feeling grief after being abandoned by his owner. However, he said that he would go to the Myriad Directions Galaxy within 100 years and enter the Star San Martial Arts Academy. In his words, he was going to capture a few beautiful women to act as his mounts. How debauched. Ling Han knew that this large black dog wasn't someone with a good moral compass. He truly wanted to throw him in a group with the old ginseng and rabbit, making them the group of 3 debauched beasts. However, with this large black dog's personality, he would probably roast rabbit and stew the old ginseng before long. Ling Han pushed these thoughts from his mind as he retrieved his cloud-piercing shuttle and soared into the air, toward the vast and empty galaxy. This signified the beginning of a 2-year-long journey through the universe. With the galactic coordinates, the cloud-piercing shuttle could fly autonomously. Thus, Ling Han entered the Black Tower to refine his cultivation. After this was done, he would then work to advance to the medium extreme. Inside the Black Tower, everyone had achieved significant improvements. Ding Ping had already reached the peak stage of the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier, while Zhou Yao had also sensed the barrier to the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier. However, although Feng Peyun and Murong Qing had both reached the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, they were unable to sense the barrier to the pinnacle level no matter what. Cultivation talent was indeed important. If advancing to the pinnacle level required 1% of talent and 99% of effort, then without that 1% of talent, one wouldn't be able to reach the pinnacle level even if they exerted the other 99% of effort. This was the case with Feng Peyun and Murong Qing. After reaching the consummate level, they had witnessed Ling Han and even his 2 disciples advance to or begin to advance to the pinnacle level. Meanwhile, they were only able to wander around, unable to discover the barrier to the pinnacle level. As such, they had both become extremely determined, unwilling to admit defeat. However, there were some things that just couldn't be done with pure determination alone. It was the sliver of talent that separated true king tiers from countless other prodigies. Even so, Ling Han didn't convince his two brothers to stop aiming for the pinnacle level. Cultivators had to determine their own paths. Meanwhile, he would quietly support those dear to him, regardless of what they chose to do. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was still a fair way off from reaching the Heavenly Body tier. Perhaps she would reach the Heavenly Body tier after cultivating under the Reincarnation Tree for 2 more years. After all, there was a saint here, and he would provide them with guidance from time to time. The notionless saint naturally enjoyed the most rapid cultivation speed out of everyone in the Black Tower. Right now, he had already reached the high extreme of the Mountain River tier. Of course, this was partly because he had been a saint in the past, meaning that he didn't need to overcome any new barriers during his cultivation. Moreover, he had a huge amount of alchemical pills to support his cultivation. However, the most important aspect was probably his 5-element body unleashing its potential. Although this would cause the celestial decline to befall him 10 times more frequently, its positive effect on cultivation was also incredibly potent and evident. In fact, even Ling Han was envious of his 5-element body, wanting to possess such a body for himself. Of course, this was only a momentary urge. Ling Han started to cultivate earnestly. However, he didn't go into absolute seclusion. Sometimes he comprehended the Great Tao, and sometimes he studied alchemy. After all, he was only aiming to advance 1 minor level. This wouldn't be too difficult. After spending 2 months under the Reincarnation Tree, Ling Han finally mastered the refinement process of the Flying Fire Pill. Although this was a level 10 divine pill, its refinement process was starkly different due to its nature as a weapon rather than an alchemical pill that was ingested. However, once the refinement process of this Flying Fire Pill was mastered, it would be extremely easy to refine. Ling Han continued to refine Flying Fire Pills as he cultivated, his stock of Flying Fire Pills slowly growing. Only when he ran out of explosion fruits did Ling Han stop refining alchemical pills and shift his full focus to cultivation. Half a year passed, and he was the first to achieve a breakthrough. The cloud-piercing shuttle stopped in the universe so that Ling Han could exit to face his heavenly tribulation. After enduring the torturous pain of shattering his own godly bones again, Ling Han successfully advanced to the medium extreme of the heavenly body tier. Meanwhile, the murderous aura of the divine demon sword grew even stronger after facing the tribulation alongside him. Afterward, the people in the Black Tower advanced one after another. Regarding those who advanced to the Sun Moon tier, they could ingest a berserk blood spirit pill with each minor level that they advanced, all the way until they reached the pinnacle of the Sun Moon tier. 12 years in the real world or 5,000 years under the Reincarnation Tree would be enough time for them to accumulate enough comprehension and advance to the next minor level. Although their return trip would only take 2 years, everyone in Black Tower was advancing in leaps and bounds. Right now, the Black Tower was already complete with the 5 elements. Thus, Ling Han started to comprehend the plethora of unique techniques of the indestructible Heaven Scroll. According to Small Tower, he would gain the ability to block a single strike from a Genesis tier saint if he managed to comprehend all of these unique techniques and if he channeled them with his full power. Of course, the limit was only 1 strike. However, this was already an unbelievable ability. Those were Genesis tier saints. With a single strike, even Eternal River tier elites would only be able to accept their fate of death. However, he Heavenly Body tier elite would be able to block a single strike. Moreover, he also possessed Rising from the Ashes, a technique that would allow him to rise from the dead. In other words, he could potentially block 2 strikes from a Genesis tier saint. This was unfathomable. Ling Han poured all of his time and effort into these unique techniques. However, even with the help of the Reincarnation Tree, he could only reach a stage of small accomplishment by the time he arrived back at the Joint Peace Planet. This wasn't enough for him to block a strike of a Genesis tier saint. However, he could probably block the strike of an Eternal River tier elite, even if they were at the consummate level. The cloud-piercing shuttle landed on the familiar yet unfamiliar planet. "I've returned," Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. Chapter 1394 Stopover and Conflic. Everyone came out of the Black Tower. After cultivating hard for so many years, there was naturally a need to relax a bit. Simply working hard on cultivation was not the best method of cultivation. Because the cloud-piercing shuttle was actually a starship at present, it was suited to fly through the galaxy, but if it was a planetary flight, it was extremely difficult to control its landing. They landed in the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, which gave Ling Han a feeling of both familiarity and unfamiliarity. The feeling of familiarity was because this was Joint Peace Planet, and unfamiliarity was because this was the territory of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, and he had never been here before. With Ling Han's present abilities, he could easily do as he willed in this majestic empire. As long as the Eternity Sky Emperor did not appear, there was practically no one capable of matching him. However, Ling Han had no wish to cause trouble, either. He checked the direction, and then headed towards the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. He had not seen the Empress for so many years, so he did miss her slightly. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was jealous, and couldn't help but deliver a pinch to his waist. Ling Han said a great many sweet words to finally appease this jealous lover. Ling Han was not worried that a conflict would occur when the two women met, mainly because Empress Luan Xing was too overbearing. Probably every other woman aside from Hu Niu would be intimidated by her presence. She was truly deserving of the title of Big Sister without any doubt. With such a leader of the harem standing by, it was guaranteed that there would be no chaos. Still, am I really going to establish a harem? Ling Han asked himself, and couldn't help but grin bitterly. Though he only had 2 actual wives, he was naturally going to wed the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. She had held the name of Ling family's widow for over 10,000 years, so how could he bring himself to let her down? The Empress was exquisitely beautiful without compare, and Ling Han had to admit that he was very interested, and did not want to give her up. This was already the 4th. In the celestial realm, he could not disappoint Lu Yutong and Li Xichan. Either if he dared to abandon them, he'd probably be chased out of the house by his own mother and father. 6. And there was also Hu Niu. This little girl was obviously determined to marry him. Furthermore, she was very much glued to him. He probably wouldn't be able to fling her off no matter what he did. Then it'll be 7, no more than that, Ling Han said, counting on his fingers. The group traveled in the territory of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. They did not alert anyone of their presence, and kept a very low profile. 3 days later, they had arrived at a small town, but this place was apparently a little strange. There were extraordinarily many people here, and many of them were elites too. This elite was in terms of the overall cultivation level of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. Heavenly Body Tier was the strongest elite, and Sun Moon Tier could claim to be elites. Thus, the elites here were in the Sun Moon Tier. Ling Han naturally would not take them to heart. Putting aside that this was only Joint Peace Planet, there were not that many elites that deserved his serious attention in the whole galaxy. Coincidentally, both the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and Ding Ping actually broke through at this time, so Ling Han and his group could only stop over in this place and wait. The two of them each went to a deserted area, and began to release the restrictions on their cultivation level so they could attract a heavenly tribulation. The remaining members of the group, meanwhile, found a tea house to sit down for a while. Enduring a tribulation would be half a day at least, and added with the trip to and fro, about a day's time was still necessary. Hence, they sat down for a short while. Furthermore, a restaurant was also a good place to obtain information. Ling Han had also left for quite a good number of years, and added with the fact that this place was obviously abnormal, there was no harm in probing for some information. True enough, there were many people here willing to fill him in, and very soon, Ling Han found out the reason why this place would be so bustling with noise and excitement. That was because a treasure was about to appear in this place. It was still unknown what exactly it was. In the last few months, brilliant light had appeared from under the ground that shot through the skies, but the exact location was still unclear. Thus, there were increasingly more and more elites who had come here after they received the news. Master, should we also join in on the excitement? Jiang Yefeng asked, his expression filled with excitement. He was a showy guy. Even after he had married, had a daughter, and 10,000 years had passed, there was still not the slightest change to his personality. Chen Ruijing and the others were also restless. They could only be called elites on Cloud Apex Planet, but were qualified to be called strong elites here, causing their confidence to boom. They very much wanted to show off a bit. Ling Han gave the matter some thought, and said, "In any case we are free. Go on. But you all must return after a day." Yes, master. Chen Ruijing and the others dragged Jiuyao off with them as well. This youngest junior brother advanced at a very frightening rate, and was just a hair's breadth away from the peak stage of the pinnacle level. He could just barely be called a Sun-Moon tier elite. Can Yi, Yuan Cheng He, and the others also went with them. In any case, they wanted to gain some experience. Founder, Rabbit, Ginseng, and I will go play then. Jiang Qiaoling's personality was also similar to her father's. She was the type that could not sit still at all. Go on. Ling Han waved her off, appearing to be completely nonchalant. Meanwhile, Ling Han sipped tea with his two brothers, discussing cultivation, trying to give them a bit of inspiration so they would suddenly be enlightened and comprehend the profound mysteries of the pinnacle level. But a 4-star genius was already very rare. What more when it was the pinnacle level? Ling Han sighed internally. Natural talent was really very important, and the higher the cultivation level, the more obvious how important it was. Going by this theory, Gu Daoyi really could not be underestimated. He had cultivated the fruits of cultivation of 10 lives with his body of 9 lives. Great Saint level and Saint level had participated in the reforging of his physique. What astonishing physique could have been nurtured from that? That is what incited my fighting spirit. Otherwise, what meaning would there be to be invincible among all those in the same cultivation level? If there did not exist a few rivals in one's life, that would really be lonely, Ling Han thought. He was not too bad himself. Indestructible Heaven's Scroll was his powerful trump card, and his grasp of Heaven's might was becoming more and more proficient, and added with the strength of the Divine Demon Sword, it was really unbelievable that anyone in the same cultivation level as he could be an equal match for him. Less than half a day later, Jiang Qiaoling had actually returned with Rabbit and the old Ginseng. Ling Han was very surprised. This trio had actually come back so soon. This was very illogical. His eyes swept over them. Jiang Qiaoling, Rabbit, and the old Ginseng all avoided his gaze, not daring to make eye contact with him. Ling Han immediately knew that something was off, and asked, "What is it? Got into trouble?" Hee hee. Jiang Qiaoling did not fear her founder, Ling Han, mainly because Ling Han was too young, and was even younger than her. However, she dared not be impudent in front of him, either. In her heart, Ling Han was more like the role of an imposing elder brother. Little Han, this time is really not Qiao Qiao's fault. A bastard actually wanted to harass Qiao Qiao. Grandpa Ginseng and Brother Rabbit were naturally angered. We each gave him a kick, and respectively destroyed that idiot's balls, the old Ginseng boldly proclaimed. Haha, this bastard has 2 less balls, so wouldn't he become King 6 Eggs? Rabbit laughed loudly. Ling Han had always been one to defend his own people, so he nodded and said, "Since that is the case, that is naturally no fault of yours. You have done very well. We do not bully others, but we cannot allow others to bully us, either." Ho ho, how boastful of you. A cold laugh rang out from the entrance of the tea house. This voice sounds very familiar, someone gasped. Of course, this is the 7th tiger of the Wang clan. What, Wang Chuanqi? Run, when 7th tiger Wang arrives, it will definitely become a bloodbath. In an instant, all the other customers of the restaurant ran off completely. Ling Han and his group were on the 1st floor, so they merely needed to cast their eyes towards the entrance and they could see who had arrived. That was a man with a sturdy build, a complete tiger's hide draped around him. It could be seen that the lifelike tiger's head was covering his head, exuding an air of malevolence. You've beaten a member of our Wang clan, so do you think you can still slip away? Wang Chuanqi asked coldly. You may notice 2 weren't named. IIRC, they were the dragon girl surnamed Helion from Smaller World and the academy teacher. This is a bit difficult to explain. Basically, bastard in Chinese directly translates to King 8 Eggs, with egg being synonymous to testicles, so since the poor guy has had his destroyed, he becomes King 6 Eggs. Chapter 1395 The 11 Tigers of the Wang clan. The Wang clan were not residents of this town, but rather came from a large city. The ancestor of the Wang clan, Wang Hao, was merely over 2 million years old at present, and he had already reached the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. In the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, this was already considered a first-grade force. Heavenly body tier naturally was the top-grade force. Ordinarily, the higher the power, the fewer the children. This was because his essence had condensed, and added with the fact that cultivation itself was something that went against natural law, and he would receive a backlash from the heaven and earth, it was very difficult to leave behind descendants. Many people would find it difficult to leave behind a child even after 10 million years, and this was not the slightest bit strange. But this ancestor of the Wang clan did not have any concern about this aspect. He had a total of 11 sons, and each of his sons was especially fertile as well. These 11 sons were also extraordinarily talented in cultivation. 9 of them had advanced into the Sun-Moon tier, and the youngest 2 sons were only slightly inferior to their elder brothers. They were named the 11 Tigers of the Wang clan. This time, all 11 Tigers of the Wang clan had mobilized and raced over here to compete for the treasure. However, because the treasure had not yet appeared, only 5 of the Tigers had taken part in the stakeout, while the remaining members of their group stayed in the town to preserve their strength. The 11 Tigers moved out, and brought with them a great many juniors so that they could come and gain some insight. The person who had harassed Zhang Qiaoling, and had had his balls destroyed for the attempt, was a direct grandson of Wang Xuanqi. His grandson had been castrated, so how could Wang Xuanqi bear with that? He had immediately charged over. He was not a rash person, but Ling Han's aura was not apparent. It was as if he was an ordinary person. However, he could tell the cultivation levels of those beside him with a single look. They were merely in the mountain river tier. Then, since he was mixed in with these people, he obviously had to be in the mountain river tier as well. Asterisk, a small character of mountain river tier also dared to trifle with their Wang clan. Ling Han cast an eye over him, and then withdrew his gaze. Wang Xuanqi was only in the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, and was not even qualified to interest him regarding making a move. He waved him off dismissively, and said, "Discipline your own juniors well, or he won't get off as easily next time." Wang Xuanqi involuntarily flew into a rage. "You are too arrogant, aren't you?" He swept a sinister look over Ling Han's group, and said, "Humph, since you are all so stubborn, then I will kill all of you. This woman shall become my grandson's maid." He pointed at Zhang Qiaoling. All of this had been because of this Beas********. She really did not know what was good for her. To gain the interest of his grandson was her good fortune, and she actually dared to refuse him, and even wound him. He was without scruples, and immediately charged over. In his eyes, this was merely a group of mountain river tier weaklings. He would be able to kill them with a single move. Ling Han sighed, and said, "If I made a move on you, others would say that I am being a bully." But when it was time to move, he would not hesitate in the slightest, either. He pointed a finger, and Wang Xuanqi immediately exploded, turning into a shower of blood. He waved his hand again, and the shower of blood had burnt to nothing, becoming energy that returned to the heaven and earth. It was as if this person had never existed in the first place. "You're so strong, Founder." Zhang Qiaoling quickly sucked up to Ling Han. "That is thanks to Grandpa Ginseng's teachings." The old ginseng jumped onto Ling Han's shoulder and boasted shamelessly. "It's been a long time since I have had some ginseng soup," Ling Han stated deliberately. The old ginseng clearly knew that Ling Han was joking, but was still so petrified that all the beards on his body stood on end. He quickly ran to stand on Zhang Qiaoling's shoulder, not daring to stay beside a demon king like Ling Han. He, and that little girl in the celestial realm, were all super gluttons. There was really nothing that they did not dare to eat. The 7th tiger of the Wang clan had been killed. This was big news, and immediately caused a great commotion in the town. "Master, we got the treasure." After a while, Chen Ruijing and the others returned. He held a completely black wooden sword. It looked like a stick that was used to stir the coal. There were a great many nicks in it, and he could not tell how this was a treasure in the slightest. "You all just managed to snatch this thing?" Ling Han couldn't help a muscle twitching in his cheek. "Master, even though this item looks very common, none of us managed to snap it in half," Zhou Yao said. Ling Han was surprised. He snatched out at midair, and the wooden sword flew into his grasp. He casually waved it, and a table was instantly shattered into pieces by the impact. However, Ling Han frowned. It had not been severed by the wooden sword, but rather had been because he had focused his power and directly shattered the table into collapsing. It could only be said that this wooden sword was indeed very sturdy. At the very least, it could bear Ling Han's strength. Ling Han tried to break this wooden sword, But this time, he was really stunned. With his strength, he actually could do absolutely nothing to it. Merely for this reason, it could be called a treasure. At least it was sturdy enough. Let go of the treasured sword. Big brother, second brother, third brother. At this time, two groups of people arrived at the tea house at the same time. Old 6, Old 8, Old 9, why have you all come here? Did you get the news? Damn it, Old 7 has been killed. What? Coincidentally, these two groups of people were all from the Wang clan, just that one of the two groups was participating in the competition for the treasure and had just now raced here, whereas the other group were people that the Wang clan had left behind to take care of things. After they found out that Old 7 had been killed, all of them had raced over to avenge him. Only Ling Han's group was present in the tea house, so it was too easy to identify them. Hand over the treasured sword, kneel down, and accept your death, and we can allow you a quick death. The first tiger of the Wang clan declared balefully. They had been tyrannical for over 1 million years, and this was the first time one of their brothers had been killed. This caused him to fly into a thunderous rage. He was already in the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, and was only slightly inferior to his old father. He had enough confidence to be overbearing. Who do you think you are? You dare to speak this way to my master? Chen Ruijing was the first to step out. The tigers of the Wang clan couldn't help but be surprised. That was because Ling Han's aura was reserved, and he looked very ordinary, so how could it be that he had a disciple in the Sun-Moon tier? But so what? Whoever touched a member of the Wang clan, death was his only destiny. At this time, even more people ran over. They were those who had taken part in the competition for the treasure and had failed. When they found out that Chen Ruijing and the others had brought the treasure here, they naturally chased them all the way here. Hand over the treasure. At least a few hundred people shouted. Furthermore, there were more and more people making their way here. They had got hold of the treasure and still did not rush to hide. They actually sat down boldly to sip tea here. Something must have gone wrong with their heads. If you want the treasure, just come and get it. I will play with you all, Jiang Yefeng declared very showily, and even unfolded his paper fan. He was truly very dashing. No wonder he had managed to charm a large number those many years ago. Kill them. Everyone did not hesitate. Though the majority of them did not even know what the treasure was, the word treasure was enough motivation for them to put their lives on the line. Chen Ruijing and the other disciples all charged out. If there was trouble, it was natural that it would be them disciples to do the work for their master. Ling Han did not make a move. With his present abilities, he could subdue these people in a single instant. This was a good chance for his disciples to gain some experience. Stop! A deep voice rang out, bringing with it a supreme air of assertiveness. It was like a bolt of lightning flashing across a clear sky. Immediately, everyone was intimidated and stopped. Even Chen Ruijing and the others looked to be struggling. They wanted to resist this kind of command, but their actions could not be controlled. This was a heavenly body tier elite. Otherwise, he would definitely not possess such intimidation. A figure appeared, his eyes focused on the wooden sword in Ling Han's hand. He asked, "Sir, could you part with the treasure?" When these words were said, everyone, including the 10 tigers of the Wang clan, were stunned into open-mouthed shock. This was a supreme elite of heavenly body tier, and he was actually so polite. Chapter 1396 Lei Dong. Ling Han smiled faintly and asked, "What are you willing to trade for it?" The man hesitated slightly and replied, 100 million true origin stones. Everyone almost passed out. 100 million true origin stones. That was really an astonishing amount of wealth. The overall level of cultivation of Joint Peace Planet was lower than the Cloud Apex planets, not merely because of the cultivation techniques here, but also because of the issue of the natural environment. In this place, the production of true origin stones was obviously much smaller. Hence, if 100 million true origin stones on Cloud Apex Planet was considered very wealthy, then it would be considered supremely wealthy in this place. Everyone else was dumbfounded. Only heavenly body tier elites would have such massive wealth to offer a price of 100 million true origin stones at the very beginning. Could it be that that young man was really so strong? Otherwise, what need was there for Lei Dong to use true origin stones to trade for the treasure? he could directly resort to force to snatch the treasure. In the cultivation world, using one's overwhelming power was not called snatching, but a matter of course. If you were not strong enough, then you were not qualified to possess the treasure. Is this the floating divine sword, Lei Dong Lord Lei? And precisely. I never thought that even Lord Lei would be tempted by this treasure. Hiss, it must be extraordinary. He must have just happened to pass by coincidentally, right? Otherwise, how would that minor character have managed to obtain it? True. Everyone was whispering among themselves, and had called out the name of the supreme elite of the heavenly body tier. Not enough. Ling Han shook his head. Though he did not know the true use of this sword, it was definitely worth more than 100 million true origin stones. Everyone inhaled sharply. 100 million true origin stones are still not enough? You're asking for too much, aren't you? A sliver of displeasure also appeared on Lei Dong's face. On Joint Peace Planet, 100 million true origin stones was definitely an astronomical number, and was just about his entire savings. If it was not for the fact that he could tell Ling Han was also in the medium extreme of the heavenly body tier, he would definitely not be offering a price, but rather resorting to forcibly snatching the sword. However, precisely because Ling Han was equal in cultivation level to him, he did not wish to easily provoke him, either. Those that had reached a height like them naturally would not start a fight easily with another of the same cultivation level, as that would implicate too much. He muttered irresolutely, and asked, "Dare I ask how I may address you and where have you come from?" There were only that many supreme elites of the heavenly body tier on the whole Joint Peace Planet. Though some of them lived in isolation and did not appear in public, those were all old monsters that had cultivated for innumerable millions of years. How could they possibly be this young? His life essence shot up into the skies. This was definitely a young king tier that was no more than 500 years old. This caused him to be wary. Being able to advance into the heavenly body tier before reaching 500 years old was too frightening. Who knew? He might have some great abilities that could not be imagined. Ling Han smiled lightly, and asked, "Before you ask others, should you not introduce yourself first?" Such nerve. The 10 tigers of the Wang clan were all shocked. No wonder Ling Han dared to kill a member of their Wang clan. Fuck. He dared to speak so frankly even with a supreme elite of the heavenly body tier. Yet Lei Dong did not look angry at all. He knew Ling Han's cultivation level, so he would naturally not put on any airs. "I am Lei Dong, from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire." He had purposely spoken the words, Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, because he thought that Ling Han could not possibly be from the Majestic Empire. Otherwise, if such a young heavenly body tier had appeared in the Majestic Empire, he would definitely have heard about it. Ling Han smiled faintly. Ling Han, from the Great Ling Empire. Great Ling Empire. Lei Dong looked blank. Where was that? The Great Ling Empire, I know that. Someone suddenly slapped a hand in realization on his thigh. This is a small nation subordinate to the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire. It should have come through opening the sky over 20 years ago. Pooh! Lei Dong immediately spluttered in spite of himself. What joke was he playing? He had come by opening the sky 20 over years ago. Then wouldn't that mean that Ling Han had reached heavenly body tier all the way from shattering void tier in that little amount of time? That's got to be a lie. You belong to the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire? Lei Dong asked darkly. That was what he thought. Ling Han shrugged, and replied, "If you want to think that way, you may do so. The Empress would definitely be his in future, so it was no mistake to say that he belonged to the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire, either." "Sir, you've gone too far." Lei Dong's expression was written all over with, as expected. A person of the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire actually dared to come here, and even dared to snatch a treasure of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire? Had he even taken the elites of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire to heart? Have I? Ling Han smiled slightly, incredibly nonchalant. Finally, Lei Dong's fighting spirit was incited. Firstly, this was an elite from an opposing nation who had now barged here. Going by reason, since he had encountered such a person, even if there was no treasure involved, he had to make a move to suppress him as well. Otherwise, it would be a loss of national pride. Secondly, with the treasure added into the equation, he had even more of a reason to make a move. Thirdly, since Ling Han was a member of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, he would not be able to draw on power of the nation here, but he could, and it could give him an additional boost of a star of battle prowess. For elites like them, how could they afford the gap of a star of battle prowess? Thus, his confidence was soaring, and he decided to make a move. Sir, since you dare come to our empire, you must bear the consequences. He brazenly moved, two heavenly bodies appearing behind him. Both of them were the same size. This meant he had reached the peak stage of the medium extreme of the heavenly body tier. Boom, his hand turned into a black demonic claw that rolled out towards Ling Han. The shock wave swept past, and it was strong enough to kill Chen Ruijing and the others. This was what heavenly body tier was. They possessed absolutely overwhelming strength. Ling Han pointed a finger, completely indifferent. Pooh! This demonic claw instantly shattered. Origin power surged like a mad wave, forcibly destroying the top of the tea house. The remaining power did not decrease. Pang, 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 it razed the entire town, and only then did it settle. Thankfully, this was only the remaining shock wave after the direct impact. Though innumerable buildings had been destroyed, it did not possess much destructive power against living beings. Those that had reached the immortal level fortunately survived the disaster, but there were still countless casualties and injuries among those below immortal level. This was also why heavenly body tiers had to fight in midair. Their destructive power was too frightening. Lei Dong was completely unconcerned. In his eyes, even those in the Sun Moon tier were ants, so how could he possibly care about the life and death of mere mortals? He appeared solemn. The other's strength had exceeded his expectations slightly. He had so easily dispelled his attack. And the 10 tigers of the Wang clan had all turned pale with fear. They did not know how strong Ling Han was, but he was capable of receiving the strike of a supreme elite of the heavenly body tier. What did that signify? That Ling Han was really in the heavenly body tier. They actually dared seek vengeance from this kind of elite. That would be like an old man committing suicide, too tired of living. Lei Dong drew his sword. He was named the Floating Divine Sword, so his strength was naturally in swordsmanship. The moment he drew his sword, fragrance would float far and wide. Death would happen without any signs in advance. Ling Han was still sitting calmly as he had been. He had even killed someone in the high extreme of the heavenly body tier, so he really did not take Lei Dong to heart. Let us battle in the skies, Lei Dong declared darkly. It was an exchange of blows with an elite from an enemy empire, after all. If their battle caused too much death and destruction, it was inevitable that his reputation would be damaged. The hearts of the people would abandon him, and the power of the nation would become poison to him. As you like, Ling Han replied calmly. The two of them shot up into the skies, and confronted each other 30 kilometers in the air. Fragrance floats 10,000 miles, the sword leaving no mark. Lei Dong drew his sword. Shua, the sword struck, turning into countless flashes of sword light, and forming a sword formation that pushed towards Ling Han. This sword light was earth-shattering, and there was nowhere to dodge. Take a strike from me as well. Ling Han using his fingers like he would a sword, and swiped forwards. Lightning sword technique, the sword of heaven's might. It was very simple, yet brought with it a supreme aggression, enough to suppress all else. Chapter 1397 Heaven Execution Order. Compared with Lei Dong's sword light that filled the skies, Ling Han had only delivered a single flash of sword light, which appeared very frail. Yet it was this solitary flash of sword light that seemed like the king among swords, possessing an aura of invincibility. In front of my might of king tier, all others, no matter how many their number were, would only be overwhelmed. Pooh! The attack swept over, and all the skies paled. Lei Dong showed an expression of deep astonishment. Previously, though Ling Han had easily dispelled his attack, he had only appeared slightly more serious because that was also an attack he had delivered casually. But this strike was different. He had already used an ultimate move, but Ling Han had still easily dispelled it. This caused a tempest of shock to rise up in his heart. How is he so powerful? He took in a deep breath, and the totem of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire suddenly appeared above his head. In the end, he had still drawn on power of the nation. Wang, the totem opened its eyes, focusing in on Ling Han. It seemed to possess a life of its own. That pair of eyes exuded a frightening might, as if merely its gaze was sufficient to suppress everything. Ling Han knew that this was not merely the totem, but also possessed the pressure that came from the Eternity Sky Emperor himself. All lands under the heavens belonged to the imperial authority. As long as the nation's leader willed it, he could check on any place inside the territory of his empire through the totem, and could even attack through the totem. Of course, any attack like that would not reach the strongest it could be. When a heavenly body tier elite wanted to draw on power of the nation, it was naturally a huge matter. Thus, the Eternity Sky Emperor was alerted at the first instant, cast his divine sense here, and saw Ling Han through the totem. Ling Han was standing proudly. So what if he was in the consummate level of the heavenly body tier? Presently, it was indeed very difficult for him to fight such a character, but if he was no match for him, he could always run, couldn't he? As long as he was given a little more time, killing an elite of consummate level would be the same like killing a chicken or a dog to him. Ling Han looked coldly at the totem. It could be considered a body doppelganger of the Eternity Sky Emperor. When the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire had invaded previously just to obtain the Nine Demons Sword, causing countless bloodshed and death, this also caused Ling Han to be filled with killing intent towards the Eternity Sky Emperor. Lei Dong drew on power of the nation, and his power instantly increased greatly. This boost of a single star of battle prowess meant being 10 times stronger. Lei Dong gave a battle cry, and delivered a slash once more with his sword. The cold sword light lit up the whole sky, causing even the sun itself to darken. Probably 1/10 of the territory of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire could see this flash of sword light. The sword moves the mountains and rivers, he roared, delivering this sword strike at Ling Han. The sword light turned into rain, and there was nowhere that Ling Han could dodge in this world. Yet Ling Han still merely used a single finger. The lightning sword technique shot out, and he was the true king of swords. Pang 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 pang. The shower of swords that filled the skies all evaporated, but this sword light that Ling Han had flicked out was still slicing out towards Lei Dong. Its might had not decreased in the slightest. What? Lei Dong paled in shock. How could Ling Han possibly be so powerful? He forcibly lifted his sword to parry, but when the sword light swept over him, his whole person was forced backwards. He had been sent flying over 100 miles before he finally stopped. Wang, right at this moment, the totem in the skies suddenly moved, and a large hand stretched out from within and grabbed out at Ling Han. The Eternity Sky Emperor moved. Ling Han was disdainful, and greeted the incoming strike with a punch. Eternity Sky Emperor, if you had come personally, you would still have been qualified to fight me. But if you want to take me down with merely the power of the totem, that could only happen in your dreams. Pung, the punch landed. The large hand was first, and instantly exploded into smithereens. Subsequently, the totem also crumbled. However, the totem in the skies was merely a shadowy image, so even if it crumbled, it was fine. Very quickly, it reappeared once more. The Eternity Sky Emperor's face appeared through the totem. He stared menacingly at Ling Han as if wanting to clearly see his face. After a long while he declared, "By my imperial command, the Heaven Execution Order is placed on Ling Han." This was not merely said to Ling Han, but was broadcast to the whole Eternity Sky Majestic Empire through the totem. Hiss! At this instant, there was initially a dead silence in the territory of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, followed by a great commotion. The Heaven Execution Order. In the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, there were a total of 3 types of execution orders, which were respectively Heaven, Earth, and Mortal, corresponding to different types of elites. If the Mortal Execution Order was issued, all mountain river tier cultivators in the Majestic Empire would be mobilized. They had to move if they encountered the person that had been issued the execution order, or they would be seen as traitors to the Majestic Empire. When the Earth Execution Order was issued, all elites of the Sun Moon tier would have to move, and if it was the Heaven Execution Order, then even heavenly body tiers would have to leave everything else and hunt down and kill this person. In the history of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, how many years had it been since the Heaven Execution Order had been issued? In that moment, Ling Han's name and appearance were broadcast through the whole Eternity Sky Majestic Empire through the totem. All heavenly body tier elites left whatever they had been doing at the time. Even those that had been cultivating in isolation immediately called a stop to their cultivation. Only the old monsters in the consummate level of the heavenly body tier could ignore the heaven execution order. Their status was already outstanding enough that they could ignore the imperial authority. But how would others dare to do the same? All of a sudden, at least 50 heavenly body tier elites moved. This was more or less the full power of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. Ha ha ha. Lei Dong laughed loudly. I really never thought that His Majesty would actually issue the heaven execution order for you. Ling Han, why don't you quickly scramble back to the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire with your tail between your legs? However, you would have to leave behind that wooden sword for me. Otherwise, I will do my utter best to detain you so that you would be besieged on all sides. No matter how powerful your abilities are, your only fate would be death. Ling Han shook his head and said, if you stop me, you will definitely die. Furthermore, you are completely unqualified to stop me. I could kill you with a single move. Lei Dong was so furious he laughed. Ling Han actually said that he could be killed with a single move? Where had his confidence come from? Previously, the abilities that Ling Han had shown were indeed very strong, but it had definitely not reached the extent that could destroy the heavens and earth. Fine then. I really want to see how you can kill me with a single move. Pooh! A human head soared into the skies. Lei Dong's head danced in the air. He still dared not believe it. He could see Ling Han was wielding a divine sword, the sword's blade not having the slightest bit of blood, and his headless body was presently falling down from the skies. It really was only a single move. He did not even manage to see how Ling Han had attacked with his sword. He merely felt a frightening pressure attack him, and his reaction speed had slowed slightly. Disregarding his will, he had not moved to dodge when he should have, and his defenses were completely ineffective as well. Boom, a destructive murderous aura forged into his murderous aura, and Lei Dong lost all his senses, heading towards death. Ling Han descended from the skies with a single step. At this moment, Lei Dong's body and head fell onto the ground. Pang pang. Even when a heavenly body tier elite died, he still possessed terrifying might. The impact of his body and head caused the ground to shake violently as if an earthquake was happening. Everyone's eyes were popping out in their extreme shock. Though they were not able to fly, they could clearly see the battle commencing in the skies, including the interference of the Eternity Sky Emperor through the totem as well as the issuing of the Heaven Execution Order. Then, Ling Han suddenly showed his might, and killed Lei Dong with a single strike. On Joint Peace Planet, Heavenly Body Tier were the supreme rulers, and the huge matter of a ruler dying would only happen in who knew how many years, and now it actually happened right in front of their eyes. With a single sword strike. Hiss, what kind of freak was this? The 10 tigers of the Wang clan were scared witless. They really wanted to faint. Chapter 1398 Yield. Ling Han stood proudly, and said, if there is anyone who wants to kill me, just come. I will be here for half a day's time. He still had to wait for Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and Ding Ping, so he temporarily would not be able to leave. All the people of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire felt their faces twitching. A great many felt incredibly angered. An elite from an opposing nation came into their territory and still dared to strut around boldly like this? But there were also some who admired Ling Han. The Eternity Sky Emperor had already issued the Heaven Execution Order, yet Ling Han actually dared to still stay here. He was really courageous. After a day had passed, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and Ding Ping came back one after the other. One had broken through to the Heavenly Body Tier, whereas the other had advanced into the Sun Moon Tier, which added 2 powerful helpers to Ling Han's side. Let's go. They moved to leave, and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and Ding Ping very soon found out that their group was being hunted down. Naturally, they were uncaring of the fact too. Putting aside the fact that they still had the military strength of 2 heavenly body tiers on their side, if each of them threw out a handful of flying fire pills, that was enough to cause great trouble for their pursuers. They left calmly, and did not deliberately rush on their way. That was because they still had a good number that were still in the Mountain River tier, so their speed naturally could not possibly be too fast. Thus, after only a single day, a heavenly body tier elite had caught up with them. This was an elite in the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. He was the first to catch up to them, not because his speed was the fastest, but rather because he just happened to be in the vicinity. Hence, he was the first to catch up to them. He did not dare make a move. Putting aside the fact that the opposing side had two great heavenly body tier elites, one of them was in the medium extreme, much stronger than him. How could he dare to make a move? This was the smart move. If he knew that Lei Dong, who was at the peak stage of the medium extreme of the heavenly body tier, had been killed with a single strike from Ling Han, he would definitely be extremely glad that he had made this choice. Another half a day later, more heavenly body tier elites had arrived. One of them was much stronger than the rest, and was in the early stage of the high extreme. Hence, the moment he appeared, he moved. He stretched out a large hand that formed into a gigantic demonic palm that could suppress the heaven and earth with his strength. Too bad. Ling Han had already killed an elite of the high extreme of the heavenly body tier before, so how could he possibly shrink back? Wielding his sword, he moved. The heavens might showed itself, and he killed this elite with his sword in a few moves. He cast an eye at where another heavenly body tier elite was, and then descended from the skies. He did not move further. That heavenly body tier elite was completely ashen with fear. That was an existence of the high extreme of the heavenly body tier. Though he had just advanced in this level, he was a whole minor tier superior to Ling Han. With a gap of 4 stars and power of the nation, he still was no match for Ling Han. His heart beat fiercely. Thankfully, Ling Han had not moved against him, or his death would have been definite. Gritting his teeth, he turned and left. This kind of freak was absolutely no one he could match. In any case, he had already come and done his best. It was impossible that he could hunt down someone and lose his life for it in the process. A day later, more elites appeared. This time there was someone in the peak stage of the high extreme of the heavenly body tier, and he was also a 3-star genius. He battled fiercely with Ling Han. This time, under the condition that Ling Han did not use the Tide of the Ages, he could only fight him to a tie. As time was drawn out, more heavenly body tier elites arrived, and joined in the battle. Ling Han was unafraid. His physique was invincible, and no matter how many elites of this degree came, he did not fear them. When this number had reached as many as 7, Ling Han finally decided to use a deadly move. The moment he used Tide of the Ages, he was practically unstoppable. He could instantly age whatever attack came at him. This was too frightening. After a few moves, 3 of them had been killed, and the remaining 4 fled in panic. When this news spread out, the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire fell silent. No others came to hunt down Ling Han. If the elites of the consummate level of the heavenly body tier did not move out, who could do anything against him? However, the status of the elites of the consummate level of the heavenly body tier was too outstanding. The Eternity Sky Emperor had no way to order them around. Only if he could offer them a satisfactory price would he be able to make them move. This bargaining to and fro would definitely need a lot of time. Thus, Ling Han's group calmly exited the borders of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire and entered into the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire. Now that they had arrived here, they did not have to further worry about being hunted down by the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. If they did, wouldn't that mean trying to start a war between their 2 majestic empires? Another few days later, they had arrived at the imperial capital. At first, Ling Han wanted to immediately see Empress Luan Xing, yet found out that the Empress had started cultivating in seclusion 2 days ago. All the national matters had been delegated to the authority of the Left Minister and Right Minister. Not only that, the 9 kings had also gone into seclusion with the Empress. Others might only think that this was a coincidence, but only Ling Han knew that Empress Luan Xing must have reached a turning point to break through to the pinnacle level of the heavenly body tier. Now, all her 9 doppelgangers had returned, and when she exited seclusion, she would be in the pinnacle level of the heavenly body tier. There was something similar about the 9 snake tribes' bloodline and mystical power and the body of 9 lives of Gu Dawi. But Gu Dawi's methods were obviously grander. Using his 9 lives as foundations, he grew out the divine womb for his 10th life. Probably even some prodigies of the celestial realm wouldn't be a match for him. Since that is the case, let us return to the Great Ling Empire. Because it was their first time here for a lot of them, they decided to stop over for a few days so that the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and the others could experience the scenery here. Additionally, Ling Han also had to make a trip to the Scarlet Heaven Academy and deliver the highest Jade Essence Heart to Old Man Su. After touring a day, they entered into a restaurant. They ordered 2 tables worth of dishes, and began to eat. Though the overall level of cultivation of the Cloud Apex planet was higher, Due to the presence of the two-realm battlefield, demonic beasts and humans were standing on the same side. They could not be killed for food. This place was different though. In the case of demonic beasts, if you wanted to eat them and had the ability to eat them, then go right ahead. There was fine food made from the meat of demonic beasts in the restaurant. Everyone was feeling ravenous, so they ordered a number of dishes and had themselves a fine feast. Knock. 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 Not too long later, a knock sounded on the door of the private room. Subsequently, a waiter pushed open the doors and walked in, showing a troubled expression. Could you all switch to another place? Why? Ling Han asked. He did not have the habit of using his authority to bully others, but would not remain silent either if anyone dared to attempt to kick him around. The waiter hesitated, then finally said, 2 esteemed guests have arrived, but all the private rooms are occupied, so I wanted to ask you all to be a bit flexible. The shopkeeper has said that we can exempt the bill for one of the table. Pa! The old ginseng immediately slapped a hand on the table, and said, You see that we are foreigners and think that we are easily pushed around, is it? Go, call your shopkeeper here. Grandpa Ginseng will burst his balls. Ling Han did not speak, but he did not stop the old ginseng, either. Since he did not stop him, it was equivalent to a tacit agreement and indulgence. When the old ginseng saw this, he was naturally filled with confidence. In this galaxy, Ling Han might not be considered invincible, but there was really no need for him to fear anyone. The waiter was very gloomy. A ginseng actually pointed a finger at his nose and scolded him. If Ling Han and the others were not here, he really would want to put this precious ginseng in the pot and make a stew out of it. But now he could only be humble, and said, I am really sorry, everyone. How about this? The restaurant will exempt your bill completely. Consider it as an apology from us. He had received instructions. If they could solve this matter by exempting the bill for one table, that was naturally the best. However, they could also exempt the bill for both tables when there was no other alternative. What was most important was the private room. It definitely had to be freed. Those 2 esteemed guests were too high in status, and could not be offended in the slightest. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.